Enter madman, stage left. The audience rises and holds their breath. They let the vampires into their house, pretend they don't see when the teeth come out. Put a band-aid on their throat. No one wants to rock the boat, and no one wants to talk about it. You're not supposed to talk about it. The curtain rises and the players come out. Webs of lies spinning from their mouths. Stop looking, listen for a little while. Attention to the men behind the curtain. Just look away when you see the blood spurting down to a steady drip. I promise to leave you a little bit. I'll be back for another drink tomorrow. I love the taste of your terror and your sorrow bathing in your blood. It's never enough. On the face of all mankind, our numbers up and the dead woman sound. Go along to get along, hypnotized by the siren song. The flames are empty and the crypts are cracking open. The horde's upon you and you stand there frozen, waiting for the word. Stand in line and wait. Don't follow the strings to find out who is pulling. Just drink your poison, keep on laughing and drooling, eating your own flesh. The master always knows what's worldwide genocide. The overlords are hungry parasites. They point the finger and the eagles fly. Raining fire, children die. Starving plague, paralyzed. Pile of bodies rotting, covered in fire. But no one wants to talk about it. Strings no more bowing to the masters. I tried to run, but they only came faster. Now I stand my ground. I ain't backing down. Silver bullets in my pistol in my holster. My will is strengthened and my confidence is bolstered. Don't test my resolve. Don't test my resolve.
Hello and welcome. Where's the damn camera? There it is. Hello and welcome to the Iron Mountain Hour.
Welcome to our plight every day.
That's right.
Which camera is it?
And it is, what is it, Sunday, January the 8th, 2023. My name is Cliff. I'm joined by Tim and Dustin, and we're so glad to have you with us. Real quick, before we get into the video, I would ask that you go ahead and like that video. Would you kindly like the video? Subscribe, pass this channel along to somebody that you think might enjoy it. We have a good, different conversation every week. On Sundays, we have a look at a different topic, something to do with some kind of conspiracy or another, or something cryptid, something kind of out of this world, something that you might hear on Coast to Coast or an hour of the
omelet
time.
recipes.
From time to time. I actually thought about making a steak and egg burrito this morning, but I ended up making a steak and egg pizza. Or no egg, steak and mushroom. It was good though.
Of course, the steak and egg part.
How you stated the would you kindly part. We need to have an episode that segues into like a persuasion with stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, the reason I put it that way is that was from the game Biohazard.
Yeah, Bioshock.
Yeah, Bioshock. Yeah, that's it. Biohazard.
It's like Biohazard Resident Evil.
Yeah. So it's pretty cool. It's kind of like underground survival in the vein of survival horror, in the vein of something like System Shock. Did you ever play either of those, System Shock 1 or 2? Something like that. I guess it's a spiritual successor to it, if not a direct sequel.
I guess it's
'Cause
very
it does
it's
carry
influenced.
and
Yeah.
Shock. I mean, uses the Shock name.
Yeah.
But Tim Pool uses that on his show. He talked about how it's in Bioshock, and
Mhm.
he says, that's
The
how
very first time in the game, it's until the twist at the end. It's like I didn't catch it. I'm like, man, that guy hook, line, and sinkered me this whole game. And then at the end of it, I was like,
what he's referring to. You realize that he gets you to do all these evil things.
Spoiler, in case I don't know.
If
in case you haven't played this game, that's like 12,
I've never played the
13 years
game,
old.
so I'm learning this.
Yeah,
Keep
so
going.
but they did re-release it on PS4 with updated graphics and stuff. So some new people might be getting to it. But anyway, you find out that would you kindly has basically been a phrase to trick you into doing these evil deeds, and that he basically
Like a
Well, there's
Pathfinder
more
thing.
to it, but
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
that's just like the kind of I guess you said the phrase
pro-
that
phrase,
the
trigger
program
word.
the trigger word in your brain. You're like,
It's an
okay,
Manchurian word or whatever you want to call
yeah,
it.
it works for him to follow his directives, whatever they are. And as you go through the game, you realize he's been doing that to you the
he's
whole
been
game.
hoodwinking me
No,
A wink in
because
your
it's
head.
yeah.
well, that's a good way to put it. You know where that term comes from?
No, go for it.
Well, it actually comes from when they were initiating a new Mason.
It actually has to do with punishing someone. It referred to back in the days before people were so massively circumcised. They would wink the hood as a punishment for sex offenders. Go ahead, no, that's really weird and stupid.
I guess that's one way to
I didn't say that.
just forget about it. No, but it was what they would do was when they would initiate a new Mason or when they would take him up to a new level, they would throw a hood over their head, and that was called the hoodwink, and
Okay.
part of their ceremonial initiation.
Hmm.
But anyway, if before we get too far into the topic, I do want to ask you to please go to Rumble. Also, subscribe there. We're at the Iron Mountain Hour. You can just search the Iron Mountain Hour under the channels, and it will come up.
Is it still all one word?
No, I changed it to
Get
where, yeah, I've actually got 2 accounts on there, and they're tied together. And I don't understand exactly how it works, but I do know I'd like you to subscribe to the one that's actually the channel, which is the Iron Mountain Hour. Just type out like you do any time. Just the Iron Mountain Hour. So if you do that, we'd appreciate it. We are trying to have conversations that YouTube doesn't always approve of. So in the event that we run afoul of their terms of policy or whatever it is, I forget, terms of use, that's what it is. Yeah. They may decide to hit us with some sort of a community guidelines strike for misinformation. It's hard to know when and if they will do it, since when they actually remove some of our content, we didn't violate their policy.
And the fun thing is they'll probably strike it for that because we're saying that they're going to.
Well, what we're going to get caught for is in 3 months. It's going to take a while for us to sink into this quagmire that we're creating for ourselves. But in 3 months, YouTube will hit us with a community guideline strike against hate speech, because tonight's episode is about the Antichrist. I'm sure there's some people out there that identify as the Antichrist, and they're going to be offended. What you got there, Yeehaw?
Yeah, this is from Yeehaw. Dustin brought this over for us. This is their Munich Dunkel style lager.
Bruno and JC.
Yep, that's right, from Johnson City, Tennessee, right next door to us here. Yeehaw. And this is their dark lager. And pretty cool. It's got a little, it's kind of like an Amber Bock type deal. If you like Michelob Amber Bock, it's similar to that. It's like a German style. Not bad. I got a dog walking at the door.
Amber Bock sounds like a hot anime chick that composes music, but rock and roll-esque.
Amber Bock.
Yeah.
I can see that, yeah.
Headbanging, playing like piano.
She's playing,
cello.
yeah.
Like an anthropomorphic instrument.
Mm-hmm. She's got a whole like cello section of people dressed up as panda bears. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah.
I was actually thinking like the instruments are alive.
I'm cool with that one too. And then here comes Goth on like a harness flying down with a giant purple cape with cat ears playing the bass, but it's like a 19-string bass.
Can you imagine being a composer in, say, the Middle Ages, and you're in one of these cathedrals, and you've got a choir of human beings who are yours to direct. Basically, you write the piece. I guess not if you're the composer.
Sure, they rehearsed it a lot, right? I'm not really.
Yeah, but I just, can you imagine the feeling back then, before there's mass production of media or anything like this, to be able to have human beings to perform your pieces, you know, in this specially designed halls just for the creation of music like that.
Devil's tritone the whole time.
So like a, well, like a, almost like a, oh heck, one of those bands that I can't even pronounce the genre of was being covered by a symphony. Just pure dissonance.
Well, just think about if you were writing a song on your guitar or your bass, and you're trying to write a chord right, but you only have so many strings, and you're like, man, I'd really like to add this here. You just got human beings there. You can have this to sing each of the tones that you want, and it would just be a pretty insane thing. Yeah, it's just water upstairs. Don't worry about
House took a
it. House took a sigh of relief. Maybe it did. Hey, Sean, what's up? Say hello to us there in the chat. Hey, if you're tuning in, say hello to us in the chat. Comment on the video after the fact. Send us an email at theironmountainhour@gmail.com. Let us know what you think about tonight's topics or what you'd like to see us do in the future. Or if you just want to tell us we're a bunch of dumbasses who don't know what we're talking about, that's the place to do it. And we welcome any of those things and more. We want your participation in the show. That's what makes it so interesting. Tonight we're going to be talking about the Antichrist and end times prophecies. And as Tim has stated on this show multiple times, he grew up in an end times church. You know, so I thought he'd be somebody real interesting to discuss this kind of stuff because he's probably heard a whole lot of it. I've heard a lot over the years, especially when you get into the conspiracy world. You start getting into the apocalypse and the revelation, and that's a big part of it because a lot of the people in the conspiracy world are, you know, end times theologists, Christians, and you know, it's kind of like they're looking for stuff to fit the prophecy. Because you know it's widely held in the Christian faith that there were numerous prophecies that were fulfilled by the birth of Jesus. So they put a lot on prophecy, and then they see the prophecy of the Revelation, and then also the book of Daniel and Ezekiel, and they see prophecies not yet fulfilled, and they are looking for those prophecies to be fulfilled. And some could argue even that world leaders and movers and shakers of the earth are trying to meet the qualifications of those prophecies, and you know, whether artificially because they're trying to follow it, or self-fulfilling prophecy, or maybe it's just happened coincidentally. Maybe it is true prophecy. Who knows?
It's mind control to use against you.
Maybe. But there are people who can point to a lot of different things that happen and say, hey, this is part of the prophecy. This meets the requirements of this prophecy. And that's the kind of thing about, you know, good prophecy is if it has specific requirements, then you can, you know, note when it's been achieved, then it makes it a lot more easy to point to it and say that this has in fact happened and it was in fact prophesied. But I feel like most of them are pretty wide open. The end times or Nostradamus or whatever it is, they leave themselves a lot of wiggle room and are very rarely specific.
Nostradamus is very vague in many cases. Even when people try to interpret a lot of his quatrains, a lot of times they disagree on what it means. Like they'll update it when it has like a better one. Like for the very long time, they would claim something about the Twin Towers used to be attributed to a disaster that was just lesser than that was in his quatrains. But I'm sure when something bigger happens, according to one of his other ones, I'll update more of them because they were so vague. I think if we do the end time stuff, it would help mostly to stick to biblical stuff, but it is not the only religion that has end times elements to it. So,
well, you're right, and then there was something regarding the Twin Towers that a lot of people attributed to Nostradamus, but if I remember correctly, I'm looking it up real quick here.
Should be pretty easy to find.
Yeah, I think it's right here. I've got to decline all the cookies here. But yeah, people said that he
We're gonna die. We don't need cookies.
That's right. I already had 2 oatmeal cream pies today. No, my Nostradamus supposedly, you know, he was a French chemist and started writing. What did he do? Like eat a bunch of nutmeg and trip out in a tower and read messages off a bowl of water?
He was a flame stirrer. So I don't know. He would stare into
Stirred in a bowl of water, didn't he?
Well, he would do fire and he
Okay.
may have done water. I know for a fact he did stare into fire
Okay.
and go into a trance state. Whether he was using drugs or not, he probably was doing drugs. But he wasn't the only one that was into like flames. There was a lot of the founding fathers that would look into flames because it was supposed to be sort of like a hypnotic state.
There's an ancient technique called scrying.
Yeah, to help you. It's supposed to be able to help you think. Like if I think and like psychologically looking at it, I think it's just really I don't think it's really that like spooky. I think like there's a lot of very explainable things and why it would work.
And also the heat that radiates and how fire works. It's actually good for your body. I forget all this stuff for it.
It's
Like
probably
that.
cold back then too. Pre-electricity, if you want to boil it down.
Well, you know the show John Black Mirror.
See a couple episodes, not a lot of them. It was
Well,
kind of pretty impressive.
that's actually from. Uh,
Oh, you're talking about the philosopher John Dee.
yeah, John Dee was the Queen's magician there
Mhm.
back in the 14th century or the 16th century. But he used the Black Mirror for his scrying, where he would, communicate with
Says philosopher.
supposedly
I probably should have said it.
angels and demons. Yeah, he was. He was. Well, I mean, back then it was kind of all together. If you were into that thing at a high level, then you would be into magic. You'd be into philosophy. You'd be into like sorcery, and especially if you were the queen. He was basically the queen's sorcerer. When you see in the mirror or in the movies, there's Merlin, or you look in.
Rasmussen.
Yeah, Rasputin, or even Grima Wormtongue.
I say Rasmussen like
Yeah,
a pole.
yeah. But like Grima Wormtongue is a good example of it in Lord of the Rings. It was an archetype, that went back for good reason. Because,
Nancy Reagan's psychic.
well, yeah, and a lot of times they really didn't have those. Yeah, dude, I was listening to a Clutch song today that was talking about Ron and Nancy Reagan. I've not really been into Clutch before. It just came up in my playlist. It was talking about Ron and Nancy Reagan using psychic warfare on me. It was pretty cool.
Psychic warfare.
Yeah, that's probably the name of it. But John Dee's Spirit Mirror was the Black Mirror. That's what the show was named after. Let's see if we can look at it here. They got it in the British Library. Surely they'll let us have a peek.
Flat screen. That looks
Maybe
like a toilet bowl cover.
doesn't it? Let's
It
look
looks
at
like a AR-500 gong.
Like, is this supposed to be the literal physical one that he would use to?
I'm looking that up. I think that actually is. Let's see here.
Because there's actually, I don't know which particular book it is. It's one of those what they call
Okay.
Solomon magic. Solomon allegedly used black mirrors like that to look
Yeah.
into also.
This stuff actually belonged to John Dee from
Well, that in the middle is pretty authentically creepy.
this. Yeah, this is from 50. I think he was born in 1527, died in the early 1600s. And who's magician? Who did he work for? Queen Elizabeth I?
I saw Elizabeth, but I didn't see which.
I think that's
particular
who he
Elizabeth.
worked for. Yeah, the Elizabethan magician. Yeah.
John D.
Queen Elizabeth I.
007.
Yeah, he was the original 007.
Oh, that was what
Yeah.
the claim is?
Or the original 00 agent, I think.
Oh my God! If they ever decide to bring that up, they're going to totally make a Harry Potter world where like there's a James Bond figure out there. Instead of using a Walter PPK, he'll be using the Hogwarts staff with the griffin feather or some shit.
Oh, that's a good
That's so
little
absurd.
picture.
I'd probably
No,
actually
no,
watch it.
no.
Like I want CGI there. I want Sean Connery back from back. I don't know if he's dead. Sean
Yeah.
Connery dead.
Yeah, he
Bring
died.
Sean Connery back, and then give him a wand and let him. I just want the original movies, but them using Patronuses and stuff. I think that would be funny.
To have the Sean Connery from the SNL with Alex Trebek.
So was it Norm Macdonald? So, okay, I'm fine with that one too. He has to have the big goofy hat too.
And take that, Trebek.
I'll take the rapist for 200. That's therapist.
Anal bum covers.
That go right up there with our movies where we replace Han Solo with Hans Gruber.
I'm trying to
Hans
think
Gruber
of.
Solo.
No, I can't think of any Han Solo lines to do with the German
It would have to
accent.
be like when she looks up and goes, "I love you," and he goes, "I know." I wish I was good at computer stuff. I would make it like a 30-second preview for a movie.
Make a gif with that.
Yeah.
Well,
Oh, the kryptonite face would have to totally be the one where he's falling. Hans Gruber at the end when he falls off the tower. He's going,
oh, the carbonite. Yeah,
That's
he's frozen.
really
Yeah, that would be too good. You got to figure out how to do that. You got to get the
Oh,
computer
I'm not good
skills
enough
just
at
to
that.
just to do those two
man.
things.
Photoshopping for that one.
Elizabethan.
Probably.
Yeah, you could do it. Yeah, he was basically he was one of the first spies, to set up like an organized like big
Okay.
spy
Okay,
ring
just
for Queen
Have someone
Elizabeth
following
II.
behind him with like a 12-string lead doing the ding, 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 ding.
Now because like this is like essentially Secret Service, right?
Yeah,
Him
pretty
doing
much,
this.
yeah.
And he's into Ouija boards and scrying and you know,
And,
like,
and Nostradamus is alive at the time of this in France. He's
Mhm.
doing the same thing.
so that I really think maybe it's that personality type that goes into it. You know, the modern CIA, especially in the '60s, is what they were doing with trying to explode heart frogs and stuff. You
There
know, they're
was
still
all
into
kinds
stuff.
of occult stuff like that on record back then.
You
Yeah.
know, they're still into this stuff.
Oh yeah.
Even if you couldn't, even if all their people, their lackeys around them, their scientist people, told them the stuff that they wanted them to work on was stupid, they still wanted to do it.
Well, remember we talked about the Operation Paperclip. We were talking about how, well, I was talking to myself, but I think we've mentioned it before on the show about how a lot of the scientists who came over and that were actually they did the research for the CIA's MK Ultra program. The reason it's MK Ultra is because control, it's mind control with the K, because it was German scientists that were working on it, and they brought a lot of them over in Paperclip, and they designed a lot of those experiments, and they were using a lot of this technology that Germany had already been working on. You know, it was pretty common in popular culture back then. If you look at movies from like the late 40s, early 50s, a lot of them talk about brainwashing, because they were talking about how the Japanese would do trauma-based mind control basically on people and turn their prisoners of war into mind-controlled slaves. It was really common, and you had the Manchurian Candidate movie came out shortly after that for that to be talked about. You don't really see it that much anymore. It's kind of looked at as, intellectual, hooey, basically. Like, oh, that couldn't really happen, or they wouldn't really do that if it could. But it was common enough for it to reach into popular culture because so many people had heard or seen the results of it. And again, with the Germans bringing that on over into the CIA, they never got caught. They admitted it later, but nobody ever got in trouble for it. And now they tell us that they just decided to stop, and they probably did, but it's probably because
they don't need to do it
yeah,
anymore.
they
They've got
could
something better
much
now.
more advanced methods, yeah, that probably don't involve physical trauma being placed on somebody or drugging them. They probably can use electronic means to a large degree.
Sound, probably.
Yeah, sound, implanted news sources. Back in when the CIA first came around, each independent area, like, okay, yeah, there actually was a law that only one person could only own so many television stations or radio stations or newspapers back in those days, but some were still owned by multiple people.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, each region and big city had their own news divisions. They'd have, Miami Herald was huge for a long time. They'd break a lot of different stories. So you'd have to control the Miami Herald. You'd have to control the New York Times, the New York Post, the Washington Post. You had the San Francisco Chronicle. A lot of big stories, big newspapers in big cities with a lot of money behind them, and they could do a lot of investigations. And it was really hard to control all those because they were owned by different people. They were managed by different people. They were less pushed together than they are today. Now you have them, totally controlled by, what is it, I think five major media companies own almost all of it now.
5 to 7, somewhere in there.
Yeah. So it's a very small handful of companies that you have to control. So if you're an intelligence operation, you just need somebody in at the top. And then you also fund stuff like Google with, I think it was In-Q-Tel. Don't hold me to that. Could be mistaken. But some way or another, there was a government intelligence investment into Google near the very beginning of it. Maybe DARPA. Look it up. It's been a while since I have. But anyway, they got government money when they were starting out and when they were building. And a lot of this money coming from these different organizations are still looking to control people's minds, and they're also looking at ways to look at the future. And we talked about DARPA creating LifeLog, the sentient world simulation, which ended the day before Facebook was created and went live. That the goal of this program was to create a realistic model of the world based on individual human beings inputting their information, what's it called? Knowingly, they're opting into it, basically. I can't think of the word. Voluntarily, that's the word I was looking for. People are voluntarily contributing to their data to this project so that DARPA and the governments of the world can make a realistic model of what may happen in a given scenario, whether it is, global war, famine, electrical outage, whatever it may be. They want to have information to model that. So they're not unlike the powers that be. They're not unlike they have always been. They always want to figure out what's going to happen in the future. They always want to try to find some way to get ahead of the competition. They always want to find some way to put a lid on whatever they're doing that the people find out about that they don't want them to know, because that's something consistent going out throughout history too, is the government's doing things they don't want people to find out about, and basically keeping a lid on it until they can't anymore. Then the people either rise up, or the people overthrow them in some way or another, or they quell the rebellion. But that's pretty much what the history is royals and important people fighting over power, and every now and then the people figure out who's wait a minute, they're doing what to us, and they rise up and they kick them out, and then another one rises to their place. And that's basically human history. So you can see why they would value knowing what's coming next. If they can figure out who is it going to be the people who are going to topple us? Is it going to be a rival clan leader that's going to overtop us, throw us out and kill our families and cut off our lineages and maybe destroy us in history forever? So you can see why these people would want to know what's coming, and you can see why they want to know what's coming now. So I think that's where we'll get into some of these other prophecies that are not necessarily religious. Well, I mean, there were religious people, but like Nostradamus, some of his prophecies here, like the where's the one I was looking for?
The Twin Towers.
The Twin Towers, yeah. There we go. Just real quick says he wasn't a straight player, Nostradamus. He'd claimed to invent a pill to ward off the plague. He'd been expelled from medical school for operating on the side as an apothecary, yet worked as if a fully qualified doctor. That's not too big a deal, but
it would be a modern time.
Yeah, it would be.
Back then, like a modern doctor, I don't know, I probably would have gone to Nostradamus too.
Yeah.
Here, put this bat on your nipple. This will cure you. Is this it?
Yeah. 2 steel birds will fall from the sky on the metropolis. The sky will burn at 45 degrees latitude. Fire approaches the great new city. Immediately, a huge scattered flame leads up.
Version 2.
Version 2. In the new year of the new century in 9 months, from the sky will come a great terror. The sky will burn at 45 degrees. Fire approaches the new
That's the original
city. It says, before we nitpick the two differences, they already have another of issues. He was never concise, and a lot of scholars never can agree what he had to say. Now, that does sound pretty, I mean, that's better than what I heard, because the thing I saw that said Nostradamus predicted the Twin Towers was on the History Channel, and he said it was like the the towers in the high cities will burn, or something. It was way more.
It was way more vague than this.
Yeah.
I knew about this one right here, but that's kind of like, that's the reason his quatrains and his predictions work. Is if you number one, if you write a lot, if you just keep writing and never stop writing, and you have like a formula to it, and you are really, really vague, eventually some people are going to read into what you're saying enough, and especially if enough history happens. How long has this guy been dead?
500 years.
So in 500 years, how many things happened in... you think he wrote more than this, right?
Oh, yeah. Right? Well, he's wrote 900 quatrains.
And you can't read into what he's doing?
But he also says this one, it says 45 degrees. New York's actually at 40, but still. That's pretty close. 45 degrees latitude.
Oh. Well, I'm a flat earther, so I think the water would tilt off. And
from the sky will come a great king of terror. I watched a pretty awful Hollow Earth documentary on TV.
Just have an X and a Y plane on your Earth, Tim.
Mm-hmm.
We're actually in 2D, folks. You just can't see it. We're just rendering in such a way that we can't tell. It's like Doom.
Yeah. How do we go around one another?
That kind of makes sense.
I said, how do we go around one another?
Don't worry about it, bro.
Okay. It's kind of like
all the evidence I need.
Like the
That's
flea
the
and
shader
the
pack.
All right, let's check the chat here. I haven't looked at it in a minute. Just Sean with us tonight so far. Be sure and jump in that chat. Let us know what you think about any of that
You
stuff.
ever walked into a third dimension? I didn't think so. You can
I've walked through.
prove to me this isn't 2D. This is just.
I can't prove to you it isn't.
You can't prove to me that the stuff behind us exists.
No, I can't. But he wrote that in the 15th, 16th centuries, and he used a lot of different metaphors that were common to use back then, and it's not 45 degrees latitude. you'd be in Maine at 45 degrees altitude. There was no steel in Europe until the 17th century.
I don't mean to.
So-
Birds can't still crash into Maine at some point.
Well, how would he have known steel? I mean, so. Oh, did he? Yeah, two steel birds. So he wouldn't have said steel. They're saying that's probably somebody's added to that after the fact.
That's version 1, and then there's version 2. The version
Yeah.
2 is the one I was mostly familiar with, which is in the year of the new century in 9 months. From the sky will come a great king of terror, which is something that he would more likely write because king of terror is so vague. That could be an asteroid. That could be, who knows if that could be a giant pterodactyl.
Sky
I'm
King of
sad
Terror.
that it's not a giant pterodactyl.
Hmm?
You said that it's not a giant pterodactyl.
Mothra.
Rodan would be more
Yeah,
giant pterodactyl. So
Rodan was more of a bird, wasn't he?
yeah, he was. Well, yeah. Well, not really. He's basically really looked like a big pterosaur of some sort.
Okay, I'm still trying to put it right in my head. I'm pretty sure I got him. Right.
Yeah.
I thought he looked like a big crow, but it's been a long time since
It
I've
wouldn't be
seen it.
Mothra because then it'd be Queen.
Yeah, but
It's
Queen
Mothra.
Mothra, not Rodan and Fields. I want Rodan the monster.
Are you familiar with the extreme hate of the '98 Godzilla movie?
Yeah, it does look like a pterosaur.
Yeah, I am decent.
The Japanese hated the '98 version of Godzilla so much that they actually, instead of denying that the film existed, they adapted that character into the franchise just so they could beat the shit out of it and kill it.
Final Wars.
Yeah.
It was a pretty bad movie, and it had that really awful song with the Puff Daddy and Jimmy Page.
Yeah.
They remade
Kashmir.
Kashmir, called it "Come With Me," and bless his heart, Jimmy Page. Why?
Though it did have the great Brain Stew from Green Day,
It's all right.
and
I thought,
but it had Deeper Underground from Jamiroquai. You can't deny that's an absolute banger.
Oh no, I like Jamiroquai, and I actually like the Brain Stew too. But the "Come With Me" from Puff Daddy and Jimmy Page was just.
I just think all these songs that you're mentioning, it's funny that you think this is giving the movie credibility, because when you go and listen to the songs that are actually in the movie, like the orchestration sounds like Home Alone.
Yeah. Danny Elfman,
They're running from like
Godzilla. Yeah.
It's just not, the whole movie does not have a serious tone ever.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, into the stuff with their monster verse, it's like that one was misidentified because that one feller thought it was, he said Godzilla from the one Asian sailor. It was actually a different kaiju called Zilla. Later on, after that, they put it into the canon. His name is Zilla.
And they killed him because they hated him. They were so insulted that the Americans might think that this is Godzilla. They kept him just so they could knock him around by the real Godzilla later.
Well, Godzilla killed everyone in Final Wars, so I mean,
Even Bryan Cranston.
especially.
What are we looking at in Daniel for? What's your verses?
Well, you've heard of Daniel's final vision, right? Where it's where a lot of the prophecies about the Antichrist come from.
Mhm.
And he talks about a dream that King Nebuchadnezzar has, and Nebuchadnezzar dreams of a statue that has like feet of iron, and what is it? Let's see, like
Different elements as it goes up.
yeah, and they reckon that the feet of iron refers to the kingdom of Rome because it was split in two between Eastern and Western. With Constantinople taking on the
You
Eastern.
can probably
one.
find a chart of that if you put
Yeah,
that
you
in the
probably
image. We
can.
had those at the church.
And then
Multiple places. It looked like an Anunnaki, but like with different elements, and they had charted out what year it was supposed to represent
Let's
on
see
the
if I can
statue of
find
this
that.
dude.
statue from Nebuchadnezzar's dreams. I bet I'll find it.
Well, if you put that in the Google image, you'll find it. I always thought the images were interesting.
Auto completed too. There we go.
There you go, something like that. There's some other more interesting ones than that, but that wouldn't exist. That's Etsy.
Well, that's not what I want. Let's go
You
back.
want to buy one? Man, you so impressed by it, you
Well,
just want to buy it. There it is, though.
That'll do this.
That's what's
Let's
supposed
look
to
at here. We're talking he reckoned that the four parts of the statue that he saw. He said the line with eagle's wings these were all on either side of it
Can they see
the
this?
statue here. Yeah, they can see it.
You got a microphone, magnifying lens. You can-
The feet of clay. I thought they were feet of clay was the divided papal Rome in the second
That's
coming
true,
of
that's
Jesus. It says, and then the legs of iron were. Now, see, I've heard it a different way. I actually heard that the legs of iron were the kingdom of Rome, and this feet of iron and clay was what's to come next that hasn't come. That's in the prophecy from the end time people that I heard, and that the 10 toes were actually the 10 horns of the dragon that you hear in Revelation, where he talks about the beast with the 10 horns, and then the one horn that's supposed to be the Antichrist comes up in between of them.
The arrogant one.
Yeah,
I thought that was funny.
let's see if we can find something else here.
Boastful. The one horn is boastful.
But yeah, that's one they think was the Antichrist, right?
Y'all.
It's funny that the first things that I find about this is where you can buy it from, like Christian websites rather than explanations about it. Of course, that could just be Google too.
Do you have an image tab? I use the Google thing so seldom on the desktop. I don't know how it works.
Yeah, we can go to image. But that image was showing me
Oh, there you
products
go.
for sale at first.
Oh, was it? Is it
Yeah.
the same thing then?
Let's see it's all products for
It
sale.
isn't. Okay, this is more like the ones I was familiar with.
Okay,
Like
I'll
where
show
it lists hypothetically what they think the year is, and I'm surprised with this stuff that you're not able to find hundreds of websites of like people that would just
Oh, no.
put it together themselves.
Bro, you can, but I had to go and I don't want to hit into this yet because it's kind of going to be the main part for it. I just want to kind of hit the scripture basically revolves around that statue that Daniel had or that Nebuchadnezzar had in his dream in the book of Daniel, also in the books of Revelation. I think it's like 17, I think is when it starts. But it's the book of Revelation, and there's also some in Ezekiel that leads to it, and also I think maybe First John, maybe, or
the book of John,
but no, so that's not a Bible.
because they're different Johns.
Yeah, there's not the gospel.
Yeah.
It's right behind you if you're looking for that.
Yeah, I'll look at it here in just a minute because I'm actually gonna be a lot easier to pull it up here. So I don't know why I just started to reach for Bible because that's
It'd be more authentic if you did have a Bible and there's lots of TV static and you were screaming at the screen.
I watched a
And you tell people to send us money.
yeah.
Put your hand at the bottom of the screen.
We really need a new jet to fly to Megiddo to stop the final battle from happening until the temple has been
From now
rebuilt,
on.
ladies and gentlemen.
Dustin Goff has been blessed with the healing touch, and if you send us $5 in our Cash App, that's Cash App at Iron Mountain Hour, he will send you an absolute blessing.
It's
And it's
all
just a beard with one strand of beard hair in a Ziploc bag.
boys. It's all statues for sale. That's what all these graphics are things for sale. But I
Wonder what
went
that has
really
to do with idolatry and shit.
I went really deep into this rabbit hole a little
Tell me
bit
there's a
today.
pop funk of Nebuchadnezzar statue.
Oh my
man.
god.
You ever see like the consumers posting their L's page? It's pretty funny. All right, so here we go.
This is the kind of website.
This is what we're looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Weird.
So
Las Vegas for Jesus.
so the original was the Babylonian Empire, the head of gold, and that refers to, and that is accompanied by the lion with wings, and then you got the bear accompanying the breast of arms and silver, which he says is the Medo-Persian Empire, and in the Greek Macedonian Empire is the brass, and that's the brass thighs, the belly,
Brass
and then
balls.
brass balls. I wonder if that's where that term comes from. That's why I say you got brass balls instead of opposed to steel. You know, they do say balls of steel now.
And then this one, it claims that it's Roman up to Ottoman Empire.
Yeah.
That's what they're saying is with the feet.
So I wonder why they have it that way.
Proper feet up on Ottomans.
That's true.
Ba-da-ba-da-ba.
The Ottoman Empire, man. That's why they're called Ottomans. And they're iron and clay, and they say that this is clay mixed with iron approximately after the defeat from Ottoman's Turk period to present time. So they're saying we're in the feet right now. This is probably
We're right in that toe jam.
yeah, this is probably what they're referring to in the one I heard, where they said basically the 10 toes would represent the 10 horns of the beast. And you get into the book of Revelation and the prophecy of the beast system, and you know there shit, that's not what I wanted. St. John, when he wrote the Revelation, he was in prison in the Isle of Patmos, and there was a lot of people say he was actually warning about the kingdom of the end time that would take over right then, the Roman Empire.
Nero and
Yeah.
what was it, Caligula. What was one of them? Maybe Nero is what I think is what the biggest theory is.
Yeah.
My comment got a laugh in the chat.
Well, good.
Well, who's laughing at
That's-
Dustin?
Somebody enjoyed my humor.
Oh, assembling meatloaf spill. Yeah. Do you like stuff in the meatloaf spill, or do you just like to do straight meat and loaf?
I like meatloaf with some peppers.
I
And
like
stuff
some
in
pepper and
there.
onions and stuff. In
No
there.
onions, because you know my onion allergy deal.
Oh, you have an allergy to onion? Dang.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Your life is onionless.
Yeah,
You can never eat
Veggies.
an ogre.
I like veggies in there.
but peppers and garlic, pretty much everything else.
Well, I went to
I'll cook half the meatloaf over here, and then half of it will just have the onions on top.
Mm.
2 separate pans, easy to do. 2 8-inch pans. Bam, we got 2 separate
You do.
meatloafs. Don't worry, we ain't killing you, Goff. Yay.
Now, do you like a meatloaf with rice? Do you like potato chips, crackers, breadcrumbs?
You putting rice in your meatloaf?
You can.
I'm about to say I don't normally eat meatloaf because everyone puts onions in it, so I don't know these. I don't know this sorcery.
I like it.
Comments, whoever, tell me. I've never heard of rice in meatloaf, and tell me if that's just. I don't think rice goes in meatloaf.
You never had rice in a stuffed pepper?
Yes, but
It's kind of the same
pepper,
concept.
yeah, but I don't know if meatloaf and rice go together.
It works, bro.
That's a little too extreme fusion for me. That
and
sounds
then-
like some. That sounds like some new wave, Gen Z nonsense where you're mixing.
Do you want to hear a new wave Gen Z nonsense that I made for a meatloaf?
meatloaf? Go for
I
it.
once made a meatloaf with Cool Ranch Doritos.
Oh, that's what I'm talking about. Taking it too far.
Yeah,
That's my issue with, and it's not just Gen Z. We've been doing it for a long time. I was stupid. I have a problem with when we get something that's really good. It's like something reaches it's almost like media devices. Kind of like you get like really good when cassettes were perfect, and then they developed how to get them to sound great, and then they was like, all right, how can we make them cheaper? And they start getting shittier and shittier. I feel like that's what happens with food. Like, we made meatloaf, and it's just we can't get it any better, so people are like, how can we make it worse?
so they didn't continue the equilibrium like Johnny Depp's character in Once Upon a Time in Mexico.
No, they did not continue the equilibrium, because I can't go for a sundae, like just a chocolate sundae right now, without it having 47 ingredients. It's like it's got an ice cream cone tipped on upside. It's too much stuff. And I'm saying rice and Doritos and Cool Ranch stuff, not for long on meatloaf.
Well,
But was it any good?
Hmm.
I wouldn't
Lots
make it
of-
again.
Lots
You
of
wouldn't make
fun
it again?
stuff.
Not because it was bad, just because I don't want to eat that many Doritos now. But and I prefer now, if I make a meatloaf, I just prefer breadcrumbs.
No tomato sauce.
Man,
No tomato sauce.
I do like tomato sauce.
we've got like meatloaf cake here.
Rice and
prefer
oatmeal.
Croutons. Now that does make
Croutons
sense.
works.
Sean says restaurants add the rice to spread out the meat, to as a filler. Because I've heard people add bread, but I think the bread kind of fluffs it up just a little bit. To be honest, I don't think the filling to. So if it's supposed to be filler, it's tasty filler for textural.
Oatmeal.
Yeah, that doesn't sound so good.
Meatloaf, what's the rice and what's the oatmeal? Both horrible. Oh, okay, see, I don't like the rice. I've not tried it, so maybe you could prove me wrong. on
No,
that,
it's not bad. I mean, it's not my preferred way to make meatloaf, but I've
White
had it
rice
with
or brown rice?
Probably wide. I don't remember. It's been a long time since I've had
Brown
it.
rice would probably
Jasmine.
go better.
I mean, if you've
Always
ever
good
had
jasmine.
if you ever had a stuffed pepper with rice in it, you can imagine it's similar. You know, I mean, stuffed pepper is basically a meatloaf
Breadcrumb.
inside a pepper.
Best idea.
Yeah, that's what I like to. That's
Stuffed pepper with breadcrumb might be.
how B makes them too.
Mm.
Got to absorb the grease. Absorb that grease.
Mm.
That's right.
Make. And
Got
my
to keep the
dad
flavor in the loaf.
made a mistake the other day. He didn't drain the grease out of hamburger meat before he put the rest. He was making hamburger helper and he didn't drain the grease out of it.
Oh.
Who? Who? Yeah, it was just like soupy and.
Could
It
you
led to
tell as soon as you put it in your mouth?
Well, as soon as I went in there and he was like, "Yeah, I forgot to drain," I was like, "I can tell."
I once knew a chick that we had this recipe that she'd picked up where you take some breakfast sausage and you fry it up and then you mix it with cream cheese and then put it in like refrigerated, Pillsbury croissant, the roll up croissants that you get. Anyway, it's pretty tasty. You could add all kinds of different stuff in it. But the funniest thing was that she one day came, she was my roommate at the time, back 20 years ago, and she came into the kitchen and she was crying. Or she came out of the kitchen, she was crying. She was like, "I was making the sausage things and I forgot to cook the meat." So she had a big thing of raw sausage and cream cheese mixed together. But it is a really good recipe. It's super easy to, and you can add stuff like mushrooms and cauliflower and broccoli even to it, and it comes out really good. The cream cheese and sausage with.
I'm not a huge sausage fan, but
I'm not either, but it works, man. I'm telling you. Especially you had all that other stuff in it. Woo! But I guess that's not what we're here to talk about tonight. But sometimes we get a little bit sidetracked. No, I wanted to get into, because it's come up recently, the prophecies of the Antichrist and stuff like that. But along with the prophecy of the Antichrist is prophecy.
We're going to talk about deviled ham.
Deviled egg. We've been talking. Meatloaf's pretty much a deviled beef, right?
I have a good appreciation for a good deviled egg.
Yeah, I do too.
It's good to have the right zip to it for it to count as a properly deviled egg.
My mom made really good ones, and I don't remember what she did to them.
Tragic.
So I'm like, I don't know what the recipe is and what her proportions were. It makes me sad.
Well, I pulled up this prophecy from October 7th, 2015, and this. This is a story from Business Insider about 11 times the world was supposed to end. It didn't. And even without me bringing this story up, I'm sure you've heard countless tales of doomsday prophets who told us a specific time that the world was going to come to an end. And then
it'd probably be like Harold Camping.
Who's
that?
With
that one?
No.
Okay,
let's go.
Internet
some Kool-Aid in our new
Harold Camping didn't try to Jim Jones anybody. He just really tricked a whole lot of people into making really bad mistakes. He didn't ask for the money. Internet Historian has a great video on this for some reason, but I was familiar with it because I was in church around this. I knew this guy. We used to watch his videos every now and then.
He said Judgment Day would come on September 6, 1994.
And what happened was his organization was a big part of the Bible. I can't remember what the name of it was, but his Bible television company was quite big at the time. And as the board of directors got older, they started dying off until it was basically just him and a bunch of old people they really couldn't even contact to keep control. So he just basically had limitless funding to tell people about this prophecy that he had, and it basically went viral before viral was a thing. Mm-hmm. You had people quitting their jobs and people spending tons of money to go on last-minute vacations because they were convinced that it was it, and just never really asked for money, but him getting that message out there so intently really caused a lot of people to do some really stupid stuff. It really messed their lives up.
I mean, I guess that means he really believed it. And
he believed it,
when I heard him, when I've seen him talk about it, he did all the math. He's like, he found the
math. Though.
Well, but no, he did the math.
Oh, if you do the math,
he did the math. But no, I mean, you take it. He took the Bible and he found what he said was a code that was hidden.
Loaves of fishes, and it's just it's math, but it's basically like if I went through this book, Carter County history, and found a doomsday prophecy.
Yeah, and you could do it
every time there was an and.
Yeah, and you could really do what he did with any book, but because it was the Bible, it was that right there is what we need. Because it was the Bible, he was like, oh, this must be a hidden message in here from the Lord. Mm-hmm. That's the guy, right? And I saw him.
He didn't come up with the Bible code, but he was using Bible code concept. And the date came and went, and he decided to add something about fishes.
He said he'd made an error.
And it was right? in 8 more months or something.
It looks like he said in in the 29th and then October 2nd. So he was off. He said he was off by about 3 weeks, and then he said, no, I'm off by 3 days, and then he basically didn't predict that anymore. But he said the second coming of Christ would be May 21st, 2011, and that would be when the rapture would come, and there'd be 5 months of fire and brimstone.
Do you know the reason why it didn't come?
Why?
Because the Macho Man Randy Savage saved us.
Yeah, I've seen that meme. So 3 days before it or something like that,
No,
Macho
I
Man
haven't
Randy
seen that.
Savage has been up at arm wrestling Christ ever since.
Elbow dropping them.
What if Macho Man Randy Savage was the angel that Jacob wrestled? Wasn't Jacob the one that wrestled the angel?
Wrestler
Yeah.
Angel, yeah.
Yeah. Let's see.
The cream always rises to the top.
That's the idea that Jesus can't. There's not a second coming because they're in a stalemate in an arm wrestling competition. It's stupid, but
Well, you know the word apocalypse, right? It means the great unveiling,
Yeah.
or the great, it doesn't mean necessarily the end of
there
the
you go,
world.
prevents rapture.
And a lot of people think of apocalypse meaning the end of the world, so they're looking for all these prophecies. He elbow dropped him. That's what he did.
Yeah, that's what I said. Yeah, but
I remember that. I
that was
remember
my
that
buddy's
meme.
desktop background for a year.
I remember that meme, but I don't remember that it said Macho Man Randy Savage presents the Rapture. But look how few upvotes it got on Reddit. You'd think that would get a lot more than 505 upvotes, wouldn't you?
Maybe that's not.
Maybe it's not the
OP.
original. Yeah, maybe not. 12 years ago. It's pretty close to OP.
Well, maybe Reddit was cooler back then.
Reddit used to actually be a lot cooler.
That's what
Yeah.
I'm saying. Like now
Reddit's
that
a bunch of
there's-
babies now.
Well, it's because it's mainstream. Anytime
Yeah.
something goes mainstream, it loses its appeal because all the. I hate to sound like a cool kid in high school because I was by far not a cool kid in high school, but like when you're talking about like growing up and becoming humans and making these little subcultures of cool stuff, if it's like a small group of people that are all like-minded and they're sitting there doing their thing because they like it, it's cool. Just like music scenes. As soon as it gets a bigger budget and they want it to appeal to everybody, they pull everything that was special out of it, and it just ruins it. Everything
Got a
becomes
couple
like that
more
though.
Fun little chats.
Not that I'm defending subreddit, like any forums or anything like that. I mean, it's just websites, but Y2K. Yeah, I was in high
Yeah.
school.
Yeah, I remember Y2K, dude. I was actually I wasn't that worried about Y2K, but I remember there was something that was in 1999, and Bone Thugs and Harmony was on the 1999 kick, and I was at a lock-in on 1999 at the high school, and I got all paranoid that when I was there, I was like, man, what if they're right? New Year's Eve, 1999, the world's going to end. I'd never really paid much attention to it, but that was in a lot of the literature at the time, and I'd never really considered it until I was locked in a school, and I was like, damn, it would suck to be
Oh,
locked
there was
in
at a
here.
church lock-in, and
Yeah.
of course, the very first thing me and a couple of the less responsible youth directors, of course, I wasn't a youth director, I was in high school, but convinced two of the older guys to go and help me turn off the main power breaker to the whole church parking lot, so they couldn't see the power
Wow.
lines outside and stuff. And they taught me out of it, and we just did the main breaker to just the church. So they only freaked out for a minute because the street lights were still on.
I'd say they did freak out.
They freaked
didn't
out pretty
they?
good
I
for a
bet they
good,
did.
for a good minute or two until they realized, because, I mean, the power went off exactly when it was supposed to, so.
Spill, no, I can't believe we survived them all. And Anna, yeah, that'd be funny to see you doing that, going back and trolling the channels, giving a doomsday date. Yeah, there was a lot on Y2K, but here's the thing. A lot of people put Y2K out there, and they're like, oh, look, the conspiracy theorists got it wrong. Here's the thing. Y2K, the government's the one that put that stuff out, right? But they didn't put it out a whole lot on the news at first, and so conspiracy theorists found it and spread it, and they're like, hey, look, y'all, the government is planning on all this crap to shut down on Y2K, and they're not telling us about it, right? So then the government did start talking about it, and everything, remember they put the things in the store, in the computer stores, like
Like all the
Y2K
stickers
compliant.
on-
Yeah, and be sure and shut your computers off. I saw a computer not too long ago that still had that sticker on it. And
Pretty interesting comment.
yeah, but yeah, the government's the one who really propagated that fear. And then nothing happened, and everybody was like, "Yeah, you conspiracy theorists got that
Maybe
wrong
it was
again."
just like a sales tactic to get people to buy more updated computers.
Probably.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like that would be.
Well, I
what
mean, it
was.
really was something to it that a lot of the code was written in the format of, ending in 99, and they never really considered going into a 4-year date format. So that really was a thing. They really did have
short-sighted.
they really did have to repair. Yeah. I mean, but you think about they started the real, 10 years before, and they were just working on getting it, and who knows? I guess they never really considered that it would cause a problem, but it was something that had to be repaired. Sean says he had a job at the bank main office in downtown LA for a full year to prepare for Y2K, a temp job that lasted for over a year. Wow. So they really they had you reprogram everything back to 4-year date code, Sean, or what they have you do, man?
So they had to update the system altogether to allow for the 4 thing.
Whatever you can tell us, Sean. Yeah, I mean that really was the thing that they had to do.
Or if
So
this is code for he robbed a convenience store once or something.
what if he did a
know.
Ocean's 11 job? It's code for he did an Ocean's 11 job.
Ocean's 2K.
Well, one of the things that's just doing office work. Okay, filing and mailing.
Lie to us and make it exotic. No, I'm just kidding.
I was working at I was working a job selling airline tickets during 9/11, and
You already heard, folks.
Yeah.
You did what now?
that place got shut down pretty quick. Or it was actually selling vacation packages, but you were using free airfare to get people in to do it. And so whenever 9/11 happened, people started saying, when I would call them, they'd be like, "You think I'm getting on a plane after that happened?" And my only response was, "Well, you don't think they'll let that happen again, do you?" That was the best thing I could think of. Everybody's on their toes now.
It's like, not this soon.
Yeah, but the company
This is
went
the
out of
best time.
business shortly after that. Seemed like busy work, Sean said. Yeah, mine was sales, and it involved the perk was free airfare, so it didn't work. It didn't turn out too well for that company. They about 2 weeks after 9/11, they opened again for 2 weeks, and then they closed down the company permanently. But yeah, bad timing to be in the travel business using free airfare as an incentive. Now, a lot of people say that the creation of the European Union is the rebuilding of the Tower of Babel. Did you ever hear anything like that?
Heard that. I don't really agree with it. No, that's just
Yeah.
Well,
I heard
I
that,
don't
Sean.
think it's the same.
They were also said. I remember that said the planes were going to fall out of the
Oh
sky.
yeah, that's part of
Oh,
what
yeah,
they said. Yeah, that everything was going to shut down. If there's an episode on King of the Hill about Y2K. If you go back and watch that, that's a pretty good representation of how it was. People freaked out, kind of like they did the toilet
They
paper
did freak out,
crisis.
yeah.
You
Oh,
remember
I
in
think it'd be
COVID?
probably worse than toilet paper
Yeah.
crisis.
Yeah, I believe it was, but it's just there was no internet really.
Mhm.
There it was out there, but for the most part,
Well,
we
we
still
didn't have like phones to record.
Yeah.
I totally would have recorded all those people freaking out, but I didn't have a phone at the time. So there you go.
So here's
Out there with your Sony Handycam that will quit working.
here's a picture of the Tower of Babel that's by Bruegel, that's based on biblical descriptions. And in the story of the Tower of Babel, all the different nations were coming together, and they were building a tower to try to reach heaven, right? So what do you think that means? That they were building a tower to try to reach heaven, but God didn't want them to communicate, so he made them all speak different languages, and they didn't finish the tower. Well, now the European Union, there's their parliament video in Strasbourg.
Mm-hmm.
It's symbolic of the Tower of Babel in that the different nations are coming together and basically building their way to heaven. And I think a lot of modern Satanism is really humanism, right? Where you're saying that.
Sure, it depends on which branch of Satanism.
Well, yeah, but I guess we'll say Leviathan Satanism is humanism.
The doest thou wilt people.
Yeah, and a lot of them they relate back to this idea of being, if you think about what government is in our society right now, it's almost like it is trying to make itself a god. Especially if you think of somewhere like the European Union, where they are monitoring all your. I mean, in America they are too, but in the European Union you'll actually get a police at your door for something you posted on social media. They basically are omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent. To as far as that's a lot of the things that God is. God's anywhere, you can't hide from him. But pretty much if you want to be in European society, you do have to have somebody watching you, and you can be called to account for almost everything you do. If it's in public life, and it's hard to get out of public life with cameras everywhere on the streets. And so a lot of people are saying that basically they are trying to recreate the secular human form of what God would be. If you've seen the movie Eagle Eye, I think that's the movie, isn't it? With Shia LaBeouf.
And it's got the guy that was in Santa Clarita died.
Yeah,
He
Timothy
was also
Oliphant.
the drug dealer in Go.
Man, do you know, you talk about Santa Clarita Diet. Netflix, if you're out there, y'all got to quit doing this to us with the show. You put, 1, 2, 3 seasons of something that's pretty good. You got us wanting to watch more, and then you don't make another one. And you leave the other ones up there. So I still want to know what happened with Joel's ear in Santa Clarita Diet.
I just want everyone here at the Iron Mountain Hour to acknowledge that Cliff watches chick shows.
Hey, well, I am married. You've watched it too.
Deliberately. Actually, I
Um,
haven't.
oh,
I just watch it in passing. I have a wrinkle in my brain that catches stuff. And as soon as I saw Oliphant, I was like, oh, he was the drug dealer in Go, and he was the guy that had the supercomputer on that movie Eagle Eye.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember what else is in.
Well, an Eagle Eye, but if you look back at that movie, I think it was made in what, 2004, 5, something like that, early 2000s, the early aughts, as they say, and the full power of the security state is after Shia LaBeouf's character in that movie. All that stuff that you see on there that was supposed to be futuristic probably existed when that movie was made, and the amount of
You think they can like turn off red lights and stuff? 'Cause
oh,
that's what he was
absolutely,
doing in that world.
absolutely, yeah.
Mhm. Okay.
I think
Well,
that
hell,
was
fire trucks have a sensor on them that can change the lights.
yeah, that was totally available to them back when that movie was made, even though it seemed super
You think it's a little
futuristic.
super futuristic, just assuming that every piece of government equipment would work?
Well, no, I mean I'm sure there's some of it that wouldn't
That's
work,
why it's fiction.
but
There you go.
but no, I guarantee you, if no, I mean I don't more than guarantee you, it's true. If the CIA wanted to look and see what we're doing, they could look at this webcam, they could look through that, or they could look through that, and they could do it in a matter of seconds. If you look at Vault 7, the stuff that came out from, I think it was from WikiLeaks back in 2015, it showed that the CIA have pretty much access to everything, and then they can also cover up any access and make it look like whoever they want to did it. So you can not know that they were in your device, or they can make it look like somebody else was in your device, and they can change it, and they have all kinds of tricks to be able to do that. And
One of the
then
more nefarious Fallout vaults.
yeah.
Well, luckily, I understand the CIA very well. And I understand what they want more than anything from you and I is to see us in dresses. So I'm not really that worried.
Well, I mean, I guess if you come over in a dress, I'll be a
Ain't
little
that right,
surprised. But
CIA? You just want to see dudes in dresses. It's the best thing ever.
they're just British
I don't
guys.
get it, but that's what you
They're
want.
just British guys who think it's hilarious, so they're like manipulating our whole American society so they
That's all
can
it
see
is.
dudes
It's just
prancing
one
around in
giant
dresses.
thing. They're just really.
And they're recording it for the Benny Hill Show 2025. And
I think they're all just into trans dudes. And they're just like, they just want to increase the twink ratio of the population so this one particular group of creepy old guys have a better dating ratio. So they can swap a little more often for some transaction.
That's right. Well, we talked about a couple of some stuff that didn't happen. Right, there was a bunch of doomsday prophecies, and this one in particular was talking about October 7th, 2015. But then in light of that, they wanted to go back and look at some of the other ones for this piece from Business Insider. We got February 1st, 1524. And this one was mentioned in something that I read earlier today, that all the London astrologers freaked everybody out because the planets were aligned in in Pisces, right? And so that meant that the world would be wiped out in a massive flood, which doesn't really make sense to me because all these people were Christians and they believed
That couldn't happen again, yeah.
that God said he would never destroy the earth by water again. But they did build arcs and built, high, got to the high place as high as they could get. Now, May 19th, 1780, that's pretty interesting because we're going to get into about this time here in the American Revolution a little bit later tonight. And this is May 19th, 1780. In New England, there was a religious group known as the Shakers who were here with the Quakers.
They sound fun.
The
don't they,
Quakers and the Shakers. Hell yeah, man. Can you imagine that dance? You got the Quakers on one side and the Shakers on one side. The Shakers believed Judgment Day had already come, and they called it the Dark Day, and it was more than likely a mix of smoke from forest fires and heavy fog, and it sent them on a mission to spread their message of celibacy as the path to redemption.
God, what a gloomy group of people that would have to be.
The smoke is here. Everybody stop banging.
Yeah. Listen, folks, we had the dark day of smoke. We must all stop banging immediately. Why? I don't know.
Because it got dark. It was smoky.
Because
It's like, why
nobody
you-
will touch me, and I'm jealous. And
like,
Nobody else
wants
gets
to
to
do it.
bang too.
I'm ugly and awkward, and I don't know what I want, so nobody else gets to do it either.
Now the Millerites. I know you've heard of the Millerites.
I have heard of Miller
March
Rights, yes.
21st, in 1843. So he tricked his thousands of followers and declared the world would end on March 21st, the vernal equinox, in 1843, and then again in 1844. He was yet another in a long line of people who said, "Oh, I must have had that calculation wrong. This is actually the day." But I really think these people who do this, I really think these are the guys who actually believe that what they're trying to
Sometimes,
sell,
yes.
because they're like, oh my God, I have to have done something wrong. The fault is not of God. It's not of their text. It has to be something that I did wrong. I still know that this is what they're trying to tell me, but I've made a mistake somewhere. I'm
Well,
gonna go back and
for
try.
context, before you tell us about Miller, Harold Camping resigned from all of his head positions, basically, like kind of disappeared into obscurity, kind of then shamed.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like you would only do that if you believed it.
Yeah.
Like if you had like a Bob Tilton or some grifter like that, he would have been taking in money, and then just disappeared and came back with big buckets of food like Jim Baker 20 years
Yeah.
later.
Yeah, which reminds me, we do need to talk Jim Baker, because we've mentioned that. I've mentioned that a couple times. Jim and Tammy Lee Baker, or Tammy Faye Baker. But Miller, he tricked his thousands of followers when he said that the world would end between March 21st, 43 and 44, and then he moved it to October 22nd, 1844, when that didn't happen. And then when Jesus failed to arrive the second time, this was known as the Great Disappointment.
Imagine having that even in your religious history.
But get this, the Millerites left, and that's who went on to form the Seventh-day Adventists. So that's where we probably the only reason we really know about the Great Disappointment is because they went on, the people who believed that and fell for it, and then were like, oh, we were wrong.
It's
They
a
went
good
on
song
to,
from the band AFI as well.
which I've always wondered though. Okay, I grew up in a Christian church, and I think both of you guys did too. Did you, Dustin? Yeah.
Never asked.
The
Of all the issues I know,
most people around
that's
here,
how inclusive I am, folks.
most people around here did. I just kind of assumed that since y'all grew, I know you did, Tim, and I assumed you did, Dustin. But the Seventh-day Adventists, they keep the Sabbath on Saturday, right? Which was the original. And I've always wondered, one of the first things that Jesus said was that to keep the old commandments and things, right? So, why, honor remember the Sabbath and keep it holy.
Mhm.
Doesn't that seem, from the Christian perspective, that if you believe that is true, that you honor the Sabbath and keep it holy, and that was on a Saturday, and then Jesus comes along and he says, be sure and honor that. And then the Roman Catholic Church changes that to a Sunday. And I've always wondered how that jibes in the Christian church, even since I was a kid. When I was a kid, the preacher would say, oh, it's the new covenant because Christ was born and it changed everything. But it's like,
Did you really move the day of the week?
but Christ did say to keep the commandments and remain faithful to them. So I've never understood how that jives for the Christians and why they aren't Seventh-day Adventists and
Well, I think if you want to be biblical, they are correct on that one thing, but they also have a whole slew of other, I guess I'm gonna call them goofy, not to offend people, but a little more goofy things. That's the reason people wouldn't just be a Seventh-day Adventist.
well, they preach the rapture a lot. They do the rapture like one
Do
time
they?
a year every
Oh,
year.
I've heard that Seventh-day Adventist and
Or not rapture, but the revelation.
Pentecostals are like vampires and werewolves, but I've never been around.
They
Seventh-day
preach
Adventist.
revelation a lot, not the rapture. But I don't remember if they believe
They're in there too.
Yeah.
When you talk about the revelation and the quote unquote rapture really didn't exist in its current form until like the late 1800s, and this big bushy bearded guy came up with it. But there's like three different schools of thought of it. One is you're taking the children of Christ are taking before the rapture. There's mid-trib, which I'm pretty sure that's what our church was, more mid-trib, which is 3.5 years into it. Then Christ comes back, and then there's people that believe there is no such thing as a rapture. You just go through all of it, and that's just it.
Yeah, from what I understood, I never got like I read this stuff a lot back in the day. I never understood how you got a that everybody would disappear before the tribulation. To me, it seemed pretty clear. And it's been a long time since I
It
read
was
it.
just the Christians.
But to
though.
me, it seemed like it was pretty clear that the Christians had to go through the tribulation, and then they would be carried away in Christ or whatever it was. But it's been a long time since I read it, so I don't remember. So
Well, one of the ways they come up with it, and I don't have the scripture for it, is the punishments that are put upon the world Christ wouldn't do to his own people, and so they think it's pre, and then some people think mid. There's no evidence. If you take Revelation out of the Bible, there's no evidence of a rapture event. There's no evidence of an end of the world occurring on account of humans.
Yeah.
I think that's I don't know. I think the humans, this isn't scriptural, but the only thing we could possibly do is wipe ourselves out. It's not like we could possibly end the world. Something else would come live here. Frog world or dogs would start living,
well, this is I had to go
Cat
back.
world.
FYI from Vice,
The
this
one
story is
world.
over 5 years old, but I had to go back to 2007, I think, or no, this was 2010 to find this one. And this was the woman who outed Prince William as Satan. I thought, this is interesting. Dr. Joy Pugh is an academic, a pop singer, and a Christian visionary from South Georgia, and she knows her satanic illuminate.
I think you should say visionary. I think that's funny. You should say visionary.
Visionary.
I had a vision.
Had a vision. Well, she's a pop singer and Christian visionary. Let's say it your
No,
way.
thank you.
From her greatest contribution to humanity has been her identification of Prince William as Satan. Now, she's published a handful of books and all kinds of different stuff. Nazi doctor conspiracies of Antichrist, the cloned image of Jesus Christ. And that does seem like something the Nazis would be into, wouldn't it? To try to clone
Very
Jesus or
much.
something like that. But maybe they found the holy foreskin
That's yeah.
and tried to clone him.
It probably wasn't arsenic pills. Hitler ate when he boosted him.
If I ever get Tom Cruise to make a Nazi movie, I'm going to have him seeking out the holy foreskin. These days, Joy, though, she spends most of her energy revealing the satanic motives of the British royal family. This is from 2010, when this reporter from Vice was researching 2012 and the long-promised apocalypse. And a lot of people took that again to mean that it would be the end of the world, but actually, apocalypse
Unveiling.
means the unveiling, the great revealing, the lifting of the veil, it's often called. And there was a lot of talk of the Great Awakening in the right wing over the last 7 years or so. So this Dr. Joy, she says she has a prophetic dream at the age of 6, and
I had some dreams at age 6 too. It didn't make me a soothsayer.
oh, I had a dream, Dustin. I got to tell you
Yeah.
about this. I meant to tell you the other day, but I had a dream that I was at some kind of outdoor party in California. And we were sitting around a fire out on the beach. We were at a big house, and we were at an outdoor fire pit, and it was overlooking the beach.
Those haven't been outlawed yet.
No, not yet. And then there was, well, maybe they have, but it was a dream, so I don't know. But I was out there in California, and I was mingling with people, and suddenly there was a mountain lion that was encroaching on the party. And somehow somebody had seen the mountain lion. I saw him sneaking up, so I ran inside to the home. Whoever it was a big like what would have been an '80s like the trendy mansion in California in the 1980s.
Hugh Hefner.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know. Just one that you'd see on a movie about California in the 1980s. But anyway, I go.
Were you going to use the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air for my visual?
No. Like on the coast, like something like I don't even know how to describe it.
I want to
It's
use
the coast.
BoJack Horseman's house.
Okay.
You got it? You know what I'm about? Okay,
A
this.
little bit.
Okay. Anyway, I go into this house and I come and I got to get a gun because this mountain lion is going to come and attack everybody. So I grab a gun off the wall and I slap a magazine into it, and I go outside and I see the cat. He's about to sneak up and attack somebody, and I pull the trigger and the gun just poof falls apart. And then I realized I'd inserted a 9mm magazine into an AR, and it was like a 9mm Glock magazine. And like somehow I inserted that into there and chambered a 9mm round into an AR, and it blew up. And then Mr. Guns and Gear was sitting over by the fire, and I was embarrassedly picking up the pieces, and he was laughing about it, but trying not to be too mean.
Very odd. Very,
It was,
very
wasn't
oddly
it?
specific.
Did the mountain lion get the?
No,
explosion?
it was like when I pulled the trigger and the gun
Blew up.
up and fell apart. The cat ran away.
At least you said mountain lion. If you would have said cougar, it'd have been like, okay, so there's a little bit past middle-aged lady
Yeah.
encroaching on the young men of the
Giving
audience.
them eyes.
But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But B has had like a dream. Had a dream like about basically like an end time event, and in that dream, I went to California, and then in another dream, she had a couple days after I had this dream that had involved California. So I was like, I think she dreamed there was an earthquake in California or something. Maybe we should start counting the days down, and maybe we can use B's California dreams as prophecy.
Oh, don't start getting
And start
things like that.
start an end times cult. We can
Now
give
we'll get
we can
locked
give
up in
cigarettes to
prison.
Anna.
My cult will not be based on any end times. It's simply based right now, currently, on free cigarettes. Tim will not hoodwink you.
You got one?
I won't wink your hood.
You
Not
got
yet.
one?
You're not in my cult. My cult's not ready yet.
Well, I'll join
you're
it
ready
if
to
I can
start
just
smoking some
just
too.
have a cigarette. I'll
I'm
join.
gonna start with two groups in my cult. There's gonna be the Reds, which will be camel, just Marlboro Reds. And I don't know if I'm gonna do like camel or if I'm gonna do something like really weird, like clove or something to really mess with the early inductees. But filtered, non-filtered, I got you hooked up with cigarettes. You just gotta join the cult. That's all it is. It'll be the first cult that doesn't want to use you to make your life worse. I'm going to brainwash you in such a way that you just get better as a human being until you leave, like a dog that I forgot to
As long
tell
as
you.
you're not in the control group that gets
It's
Tahoes.
the most, yeah, the first group's going to get Tahoes, and then probably Lucky Strikes, and maybe there's native spirit ones, which will make you, quit smoking.
Because it takes you 3 years to smoke one cigarette.
Yeah,
They're just different.
they're strong, dude. Let's see. Let's look at Dr. Joy though, and somebody introduced her to the Shroud of Turin, and she found out about it, and that
I broke down into it. That's okay.
well, it's because she figures
I read
that
the rest of the sentence.
she knows how the Antichrist will fool everyone. He's going to come in the image of Jesus using the Shroud of Turin, and then she says cloning was perfected in Hitler's time, and he had access to the Turin
I
Shroud.
don't know what you're about to
So
say.
he used the DNA and replicated it, and that he was going to create the standing in the flesh of Jesus, the Antichrist would, because it'd be cloned from his DNA.
She thinks
And she's talking about golems, and in the Talmud, and she says that these are people without souls, and that she's going to.
it's a Did you say Gollum?
She goes on. She talks about the Merovingian, golem created from clay.
Yeah.
She goes on to talk about the Merovingian lineage and how Mary Magdalene had a sexual encounter with Jesus, and then they had children, and that lineage is a direct connection to the royal family.
Okay, somewhere in Italy, in one of the churches, they have Mary Magdalene's skull in like a thing, and it looks like the things from Mars Attacks. It looks like the Martians, or B, it looks like that one Scooby-Doo villain.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Well, that's the whole premise between the Holy
And-
Blood, Holy Grail.
I know how we can tell the Antichrist from the Christ
Yeah.
once we find the holy foreskin, see if it matches up.
Nasty.
Oh man,
He's not circumcised.
She's in like a
Go pants
space
the Antichrist.
in Saint Maximin Basilica. She's in like a spacesuit. Looks like Mordred's armor from fucking
What in the world? They dip her in arm. Like,
from Excalibur.
is that real?
That's the skull of Mary Magdalene.
Is it really though? Or is it just
Well,
a-
that's what they
it's
say.
the skull they're saying is the skull of Mary Magdalene.
First thing I thought, you're like, or there's a Scooby-Doo villain that was like a ghost Martian.
Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about.
I forgot the
Hey, I'm
name
trying
of
to
it.
find a big one I can blow up for y'all here in the chat. Hang on just a second.
Did it laugh? Pretty sure it had a high pitched cackle laugh. We're gonna look it up.
Yeah,
It had green. It was green light. I'm pretty sure.
I think the skull
Surely
was
I can
red.
show you this one.
I'm colorblind, so they're not.
Okay, green, red.
There has to
okay,
be
yeah.
green in Scooby Doo. That's Man, I'm sorry, if there's any Catholics out there, why is y'all stuff so creepy? Like, why would y'all keep a skull, man? They're gonna put an
There's the
AI in
skull
that.
of Mary
Kind of
Magdalene.
cool. But
It is cool, man. It reminds me of Mordred in Excalibur. with
It
his
doesn't
golden
make
armor.
you feel like you'd be a part of a death cult if that was in your sanctuary. Okay, well, what you like and what controls the entire morality of the population shouldn't necessarily merge together.
Well, there were some the Cathar Christians.
girl's little hairline's pretty rough looking though.
Yeah, it is.
It's like, dude, it's like it's all the way back here.
Jesus.
Mary alone.
But no, that was in the book the Da Vinci Code too. He also said that, and that was from the guys that wrote the books Holy Blood, Holy Grail, and that story had been back for a while. And you know, we talked about secret societies. A lot of people say that was the secret the societies were designed to preserve, was that Jesus was actually a builder and that his lineage lingered
There
on.
you go, Tim.
Oh yeah.
Yep, she still wants to sign up.
I have a website. I'm still working on it. The Wix site, timcult.com.
Is it-
No, that's not real
Is it
yet.
called Tim 220?
Not yet. Good. I would like. This has nothing to do with Revelation, but just I joke about
But
cults
is it a
lot.
revelation?
What about me going to have a cult?
I mean,
It couldn't technically be a cult because I mean you'd have the permission to leave at any point. And I
Yeah.
actually want to self-improve people. Something that's not even connected to what we're talking about is the comedian Chris D'Elia is now being suspected of actually setting up an actual cult. But that's something I'll tell you all about after we get in because it's just so weird. It's like I looked at it, I was like, oh yeah, that's totally what he was doing, creep.
Well, Anna says that it does look like the Mars Ack. She agrees. So real quick, I'll show you a couple more of these
it
things
is the
here.
Martians. Confirmed
Um,
that we are from Mars.
Have y'all seen that? If this is an old meme, then I'm sorry, but I saw a meme recently and it said the cycle of existence. And it said, man rises up, man invents technology, man creates AI enslaves humanity, sun creates EMP, man worships sun,
Worships sun
cycle
god.
repeats itself.
I saw that the other day.
That makes a
actually.
lot of sense, actually. Which is why in the Matrix they scorch the sky so the sun can never EMP them ever again, I guess.
I want to read this to you real quick before we get. I'm going to read this to you real quick, and then we're going to take a quick intermission. And
We
then-
need to see a picture of the Shadatorium and Prince Harry side by side, or Prince Wiggins. I don't think
Well-
they're going to look similar.
Well, let's just. Well, they did find out. They did DNA testing and they did carbon dating and a lot of analysis on the Shroud of Turin. I think it was like 5 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and they did find out that it came from the Middle East. The man was of what do you call it, Semitic descent,
Okay.
and that would have come from the time that Jesus was supposedly alive.
Okay.
So a lot of
So it's at
Christians are using
least
that to say,
to the period.
yeah, it's to the period.
And
It's
it's not
and it's the
fake.
DNA from is human DNA from a person who would have been alive in the same area as Jesus was said to be alive and at that time.
It's just whether or not it was Jesus would be the thing.
Yeah,
So it's
But-
not fake.
yeah, exactly. People say that. Well, a lot of people said that it was from another time completely, and that was why it couldn't be real. But it turns out that those people were wrong. It did actually, according to the best dating techniques that we have right now and the best DNA techniques, that it did date to that period and from somebody in that geographical area. So for somebody native to that geographical area. So she talks about her dream, and she talks about she had a vision of the Antichrist, right? And this was where'd the piece go that I somehow got way up. Okay, so she's talking about the very first tumor that was taken out of a woman is still alive today, she says. This cancerous tumor doesn't have a death gene, so if that flesh can assist, it can work without a soul inside. And she goes on to describe what John the Revelator.
I know. I had to
stay
make,
with
I
it,
had
Tim.
to make a noise,
just
so
wait,
I
Tim.
didn't say something.
Just wait, Tim.
I had to make a
Uh,
noise at least. That logic about the tumor.
I know. It's
Not
we all feel the same way, Tim. Just groan and moan and let's go on. The sigh and go on. But she says the John the Revelator used to describe the beast was the word icon, who's the greatest icon in the world besides Jesus and Mary? This is the only way the Antichrist could draw people to him, through being an icon. It has something to do with the image lineage similar to icon, but there's not really a lineage of Jesus, yet there is a Merovingian lineage. Mary Magdalene had a sexual encounter with Jesus, and then they had children, and blah, 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 blah. There's a connection to the royal family. Pagans say the Antichrist will be born of a virgin that would have to be 19 years old. She says that was Princess Diana. Now, and I like what the interview says. At this point, you'd realize that Prince William was the Antichrist. And then she says, so you're aware that Prince William is Satan. You must be terrified then. This means the end is not. But can you imagine being the interviewer on this story? But
so who is the Antichrist?
Well, this
According to
this woman says that it is Prince William.
Prince William.
And she says that Diana called them lizards in an interview with Jane Pauley and tried to kill herself while she was pregnant with William, because she, they had a blood test or whatever, and said that it was in fact Charles's son. It was really important to be Charles's son because of Charles's lineage. But we're going to come back and we're going to look at a little bit more of that. What is Charles' lineage? Or is there any other evidence that William might be the Antichrist? Or who else might be the Antichrist? What do other people say might be the Antichrist? We're almost done for tonight, folks. So
Johnny Rotten from the
just
Sex
a quick
Pistols.
intermission, and we're going to come back to that, and then we're going to look at the Treaty of Long Island that happened here in Kingsport, Tennessee, over 200 years ago. So let's sit tight, folks. We'll be right back. Enjoy our intermission video. This is made by Tim.
Oh, I ain't the race car driver.
This was not made from my browsing habits. This
Show
is
the
all
Doom
Tim.
Cat. Stop showing that there's dicks in that one.
Coming to the checkered
I
flag.
forgot
I
there's.
can't believe what I just saw.
Too late.
Get y'all something to drink.
Did you ever think to yourself, why doesn't the driver just put the car up against the wall and floor it?
Right in the wall. Oh my God, coming to the checkered flag. I can't believe what I just saw.
Into the championship.
Let's go get us the championship.
And a fight for the point. Right at the last. Take a look at what he did.
I have never seen anything like that before in my life.
Ross Chastain used the wall all the way around this racetrack.
Next time you see something that has not been done, do not assume it has not been done, because it cannot be done. Be more like Ross Chastain. Be more like the driver who says, maybe I can put my car against the wall and finish.
Oh my God, coming to the checkered flag. I can't believe what I just saw.
Okay.
We'll,
But there we are.
definitely get stuck later since Goff showed his Goff.
Ooh, sexy.
Flip-flop.
I hate I missed that.
Well, it was in a threat. It wasn't sexy. He did it in a very threatening way.
Oh, so when we left you, we were telling you about how this lady was saying that She said that on the wedding night, Charles was reading these books on African black magic, and William was born on June the 21st, the summer solstice. He was born on a king's star, as Diana claimed, and she said that Harry was not Charles's son, and she said that they got a blood test, and it was that it should be. She says yes, they are Charles's son, but anyway. She said specifically on TV that they were going to kill her. I'm sure y'all seen that video before of her saying they're going to kill me. And there was even one she wrote letters to people there's going to be an accident in her car. Well, I want to get into that a little bit more of that, okay? This might be a crazy rabbit hole. I guess all this kind of stuff, you know.
Diana and I.
Yes, but it's a lot of fun, okay? This is the internet. Okay, this is the internet that I miss, Tim. You remember this?
When nothing was real, it was
Do you remember
just
this?
wild speculation.
Do you remember this these days?
Return.
We got
You make
Hitler,
a meme of what is
Hitler,
it,
Putin, Atlantis, Avalon, Americas, Babylon, Rosslyn, Ren, the Rapture film, UFO 666, and the future, the return of the
Canaan.
once and future king. Yeah, now this is
this
by
fiction,
Clinton
or is
Ortiz.
this, what is this?
No,
That's
this
the author.
no. This is a man, Clinton Ortiz, who
Breaking news.
who
Okay.
this is like the old internet. Remember this? You remember this? This was when the internet was fun.
Do you remember Beyond Thunderdome when they were trying to teach him about stuff? And he's like, "Remember this?" And they're like, "So and so." And so he keeps saying, "Remember this." That's what you're making me think of.
Well, that's the idea. It's,
Remember this?
yes. Remember when the internet was free and we could roam wherever we wanted to, and we could read whatever we wanted to without censorship and any kind of crazy
And it would
nonsense.
be completely bullcrap because man, people would post anything. Well, they still
Yes,
do.
Yeah, but here's the thing though. I want you to look at this guy's site.
It looks slightly shitty, so I like it already.
Don't you love it? Look at it. It's like a blogspot site or a WordPress site. And, you know, that was where you used to find all this stuff back in the day. This is actually a that thing right there comes from, I think that comes from James Corbett's movie on Bill Gates, which is pretty good.
This the thing. Here.
Like, well, yeah, if you ever watch The Real Bill Gates, I think it's called, by James Corbett, it's on Rumble.
Please stand up. Sorry,
Yeah.
sorry.
I said that.
Word vomit. Just
No, it makes you want to, but The Real Bill Gates, it shows like, okay, I'd always heard, you know, oh, Bill Gates is running all this stuff on the international scale. But this movie actually documents where he invests in all these companies and then how suddenly all these companies are doing all the things that Bill Gates is talking about. And he, with a kind of a small amount of money, when you really consider it, he controls a lot of different organizations with, you know, multiple, and maybe not controls them, but influences a lot of different organizations. But yeah, this site, if you can look over here, you can see how far I've gone down. I mean, I've just scratched the surface. This thing goes on and on and
oh,
on
it just
and
keeps
on.
going.
Oh
The
yeah,
search engine probably is just like more like a bookmark on the page.
yeah. This is the old days. No, this is all about how Prince William is
Satan.
the Antichrist. Yeah,
Oh,
that's
dad
what
was Satan.
that's
Which
what
I
this
don't
whole
think
thing
that's
is.
not biblical either. That Satan has to be the father of the Antichrist. By the way, the biblical version of it is just which the biblical version, I guess, is just wrong person, wrong time in history. But it's the prophecy behind it is at some point the Antichrist becomes self-aware of who he is, and becomes a willing participant in the game.
Well, it's been you know, famously showed in the what you call it, the what's those novels? Gosh, I read them a long time ago.
Bobbsey twins. Sorry, it's also those for self the antique store.
You know, the what you call it? What's that movie with Kirk Cameron?
Left Behind.
Left Behind. Yeah, so they follow that pre-tribulation rapture that
Yeah,
you were
yeah.
talking about that just came about
Kind of have to. There's
by
no
the
movie.
by the big bushy beard guy. You know, so
What was
they,
the guys that wrote those two guys that wrote the book series?
I
There's a
forget
bunch
their
of
names.
those books, but I mean, all they were
Mhm.
doing was following Revelation and give it. Well, still, I don't necessarily agree that Revelation does follow the end times.
I
But
think they were taking a lot of liberties with it, but they were, you know, making up something that could fit into Revelation.
Well, they made a lot of money off of that.
Heck yeah, they did. I've got a bunch of them over there in the garage. I
Nicolas
read
Cage
them years
was in the
ago.
movie.
Somebody gave them to me. Yeah, and then they also made one with Kirk Cameron in it.
Did they?
Yeah.
Was it more of an updated version?
No, that was the old one, and then the Nick Cage one was after that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Dude, I watched another one of those crappy Nick Cage movies today. You know, the ones where he was supposedly in debt and just like would anybody who could pay Nick Cage $500,000 could have him for a movie. You know, and he wouldn't really question what it was, and it was like a crime revenge movie. It was basically like Death Wish kind of. You know, remember the Charles Bronson movies where he's screwed over and goes back out after about it. Except they're, you know, they tried to put a little bit of mystery into it.
Those were good movies.
Yeah.
Have you seen the theory that he's actually just kind of trying to do like a Simpsons approach? He's actually just trying.
Yeah.
I said he's
Trying to
style.
predict the future.
It's an internet theory, but the internet theory is what he's actually trying to do is, without telling anyone, just silently set a bunch of acting records, like be in the most movies. Kind of like how the Simpsons at this point is based on principle. They're
Yeah.
just going to make sure no one ever can set this record again. And that's what it is about.
Yeah.
It's not been good for a really long time. A lot of people think that it's a part of him just trying to cement himself into history as having just so much stuff out there he can't be forgotten. And I don't know, maybe he's just addicted to acting too. That could be part of it. Bees. The CGI films, the sections from Ghost Rider where they took all the CGI out is some of the best, because they couldn't just put a flame on his head, so they had to like paint and stuff. And some of those are the best.
You guys ever done any acting?
Not beyond like church drama and going into work every day and pretending like I don't want to kill myself. That's called masking in society. I was good at it for a minute, and then I got real bad at it and had to, stop doing retail.
I do want to show you this real quick. This Prince William's coat of arms here, and this is they say that this red dragon here is Satan, and that each Dean means I serve.
Okay.
And that these are 3 kingdoms clutched by the roots, and you got the feet of the bear, body of the leopard, mouth of the lion, and then this is supposedly the little horn, and according to this guy,
The big mouth horn.
yeah, and then the eyes of a man, and the Merovingian crowd, which the Windsors, are actually what are the Saxe-Coburg Gothas out of Germany.
Mm-hmm. There's just some 13 dots down on the bottom.
Yeah, there's always 13 on this stuff. The heart they think they're descended from King David. They got the harp of King David, and also this part here. And I saw an angel having a great chain in his hand and laid hold on the dragon Satan, and then you see this chain right here onto the thing with the dragon.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, so those Saxe-Coburg
chain
Gothas
broken?
are actually they're what's that?
Is the chain intact or is it broken? Because broken chain is a sign of Satanism.
It's intact. It's hooked from
There you go.
that crown right there around this unicorn,
Mm-hmm.
and it's hooked to this ring right here that holds
Which
the
means
dragon.
the chain is intact.
Um,
If you believe in symbolism, you will find all kinds of chains connected to the royal family intact. But then when you start getting to when you start getting away from that, and you start connecting to like these families that are connected to like these big like schools like Harvard, Skull and Crossbone, and all that stuff. Anytime their chain is featured, including like Statue of Liberty stuff, the chain's always broken. That's allegedly a satanic symbol.
well, it's kind of fairly widely known among the conspiracy circles now that the Saxe-Coburg Gotha bloodline, the German bloodline, is who is the Windsors now. But it's kind of lesser known that they actually consider themselves descendant from the Transylvanian Vlad the Impaler.
Mm-hmm.
They're related. The ruler of Wallachia.
Also known as Wakanda.
The Prince of
Wow.
the Prince of Wales is
How do you say
considered.
that in like the language that they would speak? Wallachia?
That's what I guess, but I don't know.
Is it Welsh?
Well, I think the Wales comes from that.
Okay,
Yeah. The
okay.
Prince of Wales is considered to be the great grandson, 16 times removed, to Vlad the Impaler through his great grandmother Queen Mary. He took a king.
16 times removed. Anyone about it? Damn.
What does that even mean? A great grandson, 16
I don't
times
know.
removed. What does that mean exactly?
Let's see. I'll do that while you read.
But he looks at that and he says, "Well, I'm a descendant of Vlad the Impaler," and he decided he would find out some more about it. So he made that his second home. It's the center of Romania, Transylvania, and is best known for Bram Stoker's Dracula. But Prince Charles, or now King Charles, says that he's descended from, and he sleeps in his palace, and this is Visri. Visri is Prince Charles's favorite place in Romania. He owns a whole place in the city of the village of Visri, and
Doesn't the remove doesn't necessarily mean it's too far off. It actually just means that they've consistently kept cousins for 16 consecutive generations.
kept cousins for 16.
Like their first cousins within 16, they know that their first cousins are linked all the way back to 16 generations
okay.
back. So
that actually would mean pretty close.
allegedly, I guess pretty close according to
Yeah.
Google here. But it does sound pretty distant, doesn't it?
Yeah.
16 times twice removed.
Yeah, that sounds.
Somebody fact check me. Somebody older than me probably knows better.
But anyway, he likes he claims he's descended from Dracula. He goes and sleeps in Dracula's home. And
Meanwhile, the Queen of England
so that
was
bloodline
the
is
one running the Red Cross of England for like 60 years. Is that suspicious?
Now let's look at this from here, from April 13th, 2017. Prince Charles, this is from USA Today.
That's nice, honey.
Prince Charles offered a new title of Prince of
This is
Transylvania.
just the dumbest, a dumb end of life crisis he's having. Where he's
Let's
like,
see
I'm a vampire. God, he's losing his mind. He really is going to start another war. I need blood.
Prince of Wales, heir to the British throne, heir to Vlad the Impaler, better known as the inspiration for Dracula, has not been won. But on Thursday, Charles has been offered a title, Prince of Transylvania, by a mayor in Romania, a country close to Charles's heart. And he boasts that he shares a bloodline with legendary, cruel 15th century Prince Vlad the Impaler, a psychopathic despot whose reputation for impaling enemies on pikes gave rise to Count Dracula in Bram Stoker's 1897 novel Dracula. So Prince, he's all into this shit, right? So here's another thing. We mentioned that they're the lady in Dr. Joy in the article from Vice. She mentioned that William was born on the summer solstice. We talked about the significance of Diana and Artemis in one of these episodes, and Diana was actually killed in the Pont de l'Alma. It was like the bridge of the worship. The tunnel was basically for worshiping the goddess Diana. That's where Diana died. And a lot of people say that, it's pretty weird that she got hit in there and then they kept her in there instead of taking her to the hospital, and then it was almost important that she die in there.
Mm-hmm.
So it was supposed to be a lot of people said it was a sacrifice. But she mentioned, Dr. Joy mentioned in the article from Vice that William was born on the summer solstice. Well, in his film Lady Di, Christopher Everard cites that William was actually born of a cesarean section on the 21st, so that he would be born on that particular date, so that he would match that prophecy. And we'll get back
I don't know
into.
if you can force a prophecy. I think you guys are
Well, if they
phonies.
if they tried to inseminate him, or if they planned to have the baby on that particular day, they could make sure that she got pregnant around the time. You know what I'm saying?
Phonies.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. It's all part of a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's almost like if these people do manage to, you big fat phony.
They are phonies. Like if your prophecy just doesn't naturally fulfill itself, you gotta fake
that's
it.
right. So a lot of Christians are really. Does anybody want one?
Good thinking.
A lot of Christians are really worried about this prophecy being fulfilled, but I see it as these people know the prophecy and they're just trying to act it out, and they're trying to say that they're part of it. And does that really even count?
No, I don't think it does. Plus, the Shroud of Turin. I gotta see you line that thing up with one of those goofy bastards that are in the royal family. I'm telling you, I gotta line up.
Yeah, she says nice demonic crest Phil does, and says I think they're on the official website. It insinuates they're not human somehow. Yeah, they don't. They think that they have the divine right of kings.
I think they have
And
like
they think
dragon
they-
blood in them and
Yeah,
shit.
they think they descend from a master race.
That's not
basically.
just them either, because the like the high society people in like Asia, they think they're related to dragons too.
Yeah.
They just call it different things. But I mean, it's not just the conspiracy people that are calling them lizard people. They call themselves dragon bloods and all kinds of weird, creepy shit because they're elitist. Whether they've got it in there or not, all I can say is one thing: dragons be ugly.
Do you think? I mean, do you think they just like? I mean, do you think they tried to fulfill these prophecies all along, or do you think they they think that they just wanted to convince people, or do you think they've been convincing people for so long that now they're just basically like smelling their own farts and think that they're the ones that meet
Maybe.
the thing? Do you think they really believe it now? It's almost like Prince Charles is smelling his own farts, and he thinks that that's just the best thing since canned gravy.
Well,
And-
it's like the people that left the, I guess, Pilgrims, whoever it was, the first people that left for the Americas. They had that whole sense of manifest destiny and all that. So really, everybody believes that they're the chosen holy people and God's on their side. But I mean, could you really think you're related? I mean, look at them. I mean, I'm just saying, like, creepy bunch of people.
Well, they do think. I mean, they think they're better than everybody. They say that's why they have the right to rule over people. That's royalty in antiquity have said that. They're descended from the race of the masters, the race of God, and that's why they've been given dominion over the earth. And they base that on a lot of stuff that's in the Bible. So with the people following the Bible, they say, hey, we meet the description of this, and they've done this consistently throughout history. The royals and the people, the power brokers, have said, hey, we are these guys.
Black Israelites.
Well,
Everybody's doing it.
everybody's
Everybody's
working out as well
linked.
for them, but
Everybody, oh, they're still out in the streets of New York screaming about how they're the rightfully chosen people and that the Ashkenazi Jews have stolen their birthright, and every group of people wants to connect themselves to something important.
and they say they're from the tribe of Dan, right?
They say that they're the original Jews, that all the white devil people were never Jews to begin with, and that the only true Jewish people were black people from Africa, and that the reason they called themselves Jews was the ultimate cultural appropriation.
Oh no, that's right. The Antichrist is supposed to come from the tribe of Dan. That's right. That's where I get the tribe of Dan. But
They're funny to listen to, dude, because it's a bunch of black dudes in New York, and they're roasting people as they walk by. And if you don't take it offensively, like, oh my God, they think they're the only people going to heaven, you listen to them roasting people, they're hilarious. It's like Def Jam comedy, but with like a religion that you don't quite understand. What is this? You look at KKK God, Cliff. This is bookmarked. Are you a member?
this is all the this is how big this Canaanite website is. Just the article on Prince William.
What's the reference for Canaanite? Is he
Canaanite.net.
Cain? As in,
yeah,
he
I
thinks
guess
he's
so.
a descendant of Cain or what?
Oh, I don't know about that.
Just interesting choice of wording.
But Prince William, he also he went in 2018 and he met between the Palestinians and Israelis, and they said, this is his first act of diplomacy as a prince. So he's apparently he does meet a lot of the qualifications to fulfill the biblical prophecy of the Antichrist based in Revelation and a lot of those things. But a lot of people also said the Pope, because the new Pope that we've had would Pope Francis, who was
Newest Pope.
he's been Pope for about 7-8 years now. I think it was 2013 actually, when Benedict,
The other one stepped down.
Joseph
Did ever-
Ratzinger, the German Pope.
They didn't announce
He
this
died, didn't
No, he had to step down because of shame.
No,
They didn't announce
but
it.
he died
Oh,
recently.
he may have died since,
I
yeah.
think he died just a couple days before the end of the new
And
year.
man, that was a hugely underreported story that he was...
He's the first Pope ever to step down.
Mhm, and everybody's like, oh, they tried to like put it out there like hush hush, like, oh, he has dementia and he's really ashamed. It's like, or his kids came out and said he's been raping them for 25
Is that what
years.
happened?
Yeah,
Oh.
his own kids came out and they were like, look, we can't let this monster become the Pope. Our own guilty conscience can only take so much.
No, you're talking about the guy who was already Pope. You're talking about Joseph Ratzinger,
The dude who
Pope Benedict.
got there by mysterious means after the one dude died, and he was only Pope for... He wasn't Pope for many.
John
for a very
Paul
long
II
time.
died in the early 2000s, and then Joseph Ratzinger, the Pope.
He was a Nazi.
Yeah,
not
he
Hitler
was a
youth.
Hitler Youth, yeah.
Worked his way up into the popery, and then his own kids came out and were like, "Look,
Oh,
this
I
guy."
didn't know they came
Yeah,
out.
you can find the BBC articles and stuff. They
Oh.
really, really did their best to absolutely suppress why that
Well,
particular
that-
pope stepped down.
And they said that this guy was actually the first one to actually start investigating the abuses against people, against
The one that
kids.
stepped down.
Yeah.
Okay,
But
well,
maybe it was because he was trying to cover up
Yeah.
what he was doing, if that's what happened. But at any rate,
Scrub this out.
he was the first pope ever to step down before he died.
Mhm.
And he didn't, they said that he was stepping down for his health because he just couldn't do it anymore. But then he didn't die until just this year. Well, but Ratzinger is the guy that stepped down, the guy from Pope Francis. I never understood why, what do they call him? Pope Frank or something. His name really Francisco. But anyway, but they bring this guy in who
he's pretty popular, isn't he?
yeah, he's pretty mixed. A lot of traditional Catholics don't like him. They feel like that he's
He's the one that the Irish was boycotting. It was like the first time he had ever come over there, and for the first time ever, they usually, like when the Pope would come to Ireland, basically the entire country would swarm to him, and I think they couldn't even break the 1 million mark to
well,
get him over there.
he's the first pope from South America. He was from Brazil, and it was a one of a kind conflagration when they brought this cardinals together to vote for who's going to be the pope. You remember the smoke from the chimney when they just decided the new one. It was this big ordeal, and then they
It's
picked
probably
this
pretty
guy.
unique that we saw that ceremony twice in our
Yeah,
lifetime.
yeah.
Because you're only supposed to see it once.
Yeah, popes don't usually go away that quickly. But this guy, he was the first. He was the head of the Jesuit orders, which people say makes him the Black Pope, and he was the first Black Pope to become the White Pope. So a lot of people were saying that guy
Great white transition.
was going to be the Antichrist. I don't know that he meets the
People don't like him
qualifications, but he definitely has people saying that he's going to bring in the aliens, and he's the one that's going to introduce.
He's a diversity hire.
Yeah, well,
he's okay.
I mean, they kind of bring it about like that he's the one that's going to designate or combine all the religions to one. And they had in the 1986, they said the same thing about John Paul II, because he met with all the different religions, Native American Indians, and different religions from all around the world. And he said basically we all worship the same God, and said so people were saying, oh, this is the Pope bringing about the end times because he's uniting everybody under this false god. And that's one of the things that the Antichrist is supposed to do, is unite all the religions under a false god. And that's one of the antagonists in the Left Behind series, Vigo Carpathia or something like Nikolai Carpathia. Yeah, he's this guy, and he's actually from Romania. In
Pretty
that
pretentious name.
Yeah,
Sounds
yeah.
fake.
Yeah, it's kind of like Vigor from Ghostbusters 2, Vigor the Carpathian. But that actually is, though, it's based on the Romanian, the skull of the sorrow of Moldova. It's that same bloodline from Dracul that comes back through Romania that the Prince of Wales, or now King Charles, has. And his son was born on the 21st on the summer solstice, which was falling to some prophecy or another. And then you've also got the fact that he's in Europe, which they're looking at the European Union and the UN forming and having 10 districts. A lot of people say the 10 different regions under the UN will be the 10 different kings that are the horns on the beast, and that the lady who's riding on the beast is the she what's her the harlot riding the
The whore
beast.
of Babylon.
So that's supposed to be representative of a church or the world religion, and her head says the Great Mystery Babylon or something like that. And a lot of people say that means that this is representative of a new government with a new religion rising up, and that the UN is that new government, and that they were waiting to try to form a new religion, and they're also waiting on the rebuilding of the temple there in Jerusalem. Because the Jews, they think that Jesus was a false prophet, and they're still waiting on the real Messiah. And then the Christians are waiting on the second coming of the Messiah, both of which are dependent on the building of this temple in Jerusalem. Did you ever hear anything about the calf, the red heifer that was supposed to be born? Did your church ever talk about that?
Oh yeah, quite a bit.
Can you tell us anything about that?
Allegedly, I don't know how long it would take for them to do it, but allegedly, at any point in time, they were going to give birth to a red heifer that was without blemish, and that heifer was to be sacrificed for some reason. It's like, if you're just, I don't know if they were waiting on the particular heifer, because it's supposed to be symbolic of old practices from back in the day. Uh, but I don't know if it's supposed to be based on when it is. But like the way they talked about it was when this cow was born. I'm like, so it's like the cow Messiah. But I don't know that like there's so much like wiggle stuff when you start talking about end time stuff, because in the end what it is people looking for a reason to believe something that hasn't happened yet. And the unblemished heifer.
The unblemished heifer.
So
And
just
also to
if
go
you think
back
there's
to
if you
the-
think Hulk Hogan or Randy Savage is up for wrestling Jesus, it might not be. It might be more of a Mormon thing where that cow's refusing to come to Earth.
Space cow.
This is a depiction from Clausper Historiae's Biblical Veritas in the New Testament, and this is John's vision of the New Jerusalem, basically the rebuilding of the temple here, and the things that he saw from the Isle of Patmos. A lot of people say this was code because of at the time the turmoil that was going on in the church and in the government in Rome, and the everything that was going on around that time. Because remember Julius Caesar. He was killed 45 BC, something like that. There was a lot of turmoil going on in Rome, which is the biggest power in the world at the time, and so a lot of people say that these things that John wrote was just coded messages, but relating to what was going on in Rome at the time, and that everything that meant anything has already been fulfilled, and
They really still celebrate the Ides of March over there in Rome, by the way. Like it's still, which I steal like anybody would have it in remembrance, but like it's just for something I'd never really heard of that much. I thought it was interesting for the celebration that they were having.
And this is the four creatures: the bull, the lion, the eagle, and the man. They represent the four corners of creation, the multitude of eyes which were covered the stars of the firmament, and 24 elders. And this is supposed to be the throne of God and the Lamb revealed in the Revelation.
See, they take a lot of stuff in the New Testament, like for the prophecies, and they try to use like Hebrew texts to do all this stuff. And well, prophecy's pretty easy to fulfill when it's written out like a recipe. You know what I'm saying? So at that point in time, if it's not just happen naturally, why would you think that you're the chosen one? But
Yeah. I think it would make more sense. I mean, I don't know if you found a prophecy book that had been hidden for millennia, and then you found something that suddenly met the requirements of it, it might be a lot more believable. But the fact that we all have access to this stuff, and basically anybody with enough money and power, and I mean, you got to think about it. If you're in positions of power over the years, you can constantly make yourself seem to be part of that to meet that prophecy. But I don't know, man. I think it's I think it's a whole lot of craziness going on when you think about what that prophecy entails. Because there's the people like Charles, for example, who's the King of England now, actually do believe that, and the people around them actually do believe that. It seems like it could cause a lot of damage on their way out, especially if William and Charles, they're connected to all these World Economic Forum places. Prince Andrew famously said, or Prince Philip, Charles's dad, famously said that if he could die and come back as anything, that he would come back as a virus, a deadly virus,
what's a
to help
stupid wish?
deal with the problem of overpopulation.
It's like
That's a stupid
Clorox.
wish.
But Prince,
That's a gumball, actually a gumball skit where it's like this. I have to find it and show it to you after the show. It'd be funny if I don't do it in words. But that's a dumb wish because viruses don't get to die.
But Prince Charles was raised by a man who believed that. That was his father. He believed that
Sucks to be him.
his favorite thing to come out. So think about that though. That's what Charles grew up hearing. That I'm sure that he heard that stuff. But anyway, before we go, there's people that have gone on about the Antichrist for years and years and years. We're not going to get done with it in 2 hours. We're just having a fun talk about it here. But it's been in the news a lot lately. It's been in comment sections. It's been in internet videos. So I thought we'd go over it a little bit and talk about some of the false prophets and some of the different ideas that people have for it. But I did want to look at one more thing before we go, and that is the story of Wait a minute. Dragons and lizards spill are lizards. Okay. Yeah, they are. Yeah, the dragons are.
Dinosaurs? I mean,
Yeah.
it's about the same thing. Right?
Dragons, dinosaurs. You reckon that the dragons were basically because they found dinosaur bones and like imagined them and you know?
Man, I think it predates that though. I mean, like, don't you think it's weird that every culture has a dragon? So I would have to think that those did exist at one point.
Or do you think it was a depiction of flying technology?
I think there's big lizards.
You think? Well, I mean, there
I think
were
it's probably both.
there were big flying lizards.
I do
but
think there was dragons at one
but if
point.
you found a big flying lizard, you know, if you found a big pterodactyl skeleton, and you know you had rudimentary understanding of what it actually was you were finding, would you not think dragon? I mean, if you saw a giant
Yeah.
winged creature that,
Like it kind of like the bigger version of the Quetzalcoatlus.
Yeah.
How big those things were, that would be very.
and then do you think
Dragon-esque.
maybe people who had found those societies had found those were visited by people on flying craft and was like that was the best way they had to describe it is they all knew what a dragon was because they'd found some kind of dinosaur bones before.
I think it's just like goofy of us to assume that humans didn't discover flying or even electricity or some other kinds of technology at some point. They just didn't take it as far as we took
Yeah.
it. It doesn't have to be a giant wiping out of an entire species for one small group of people to discover how to fly and then they never give that technology to anybody else.
But then again, it's like even if think about our society right now, if our society was wiped out by some kind of mass extinction event, and some of us survived, some of us retained the ability to have, say everybody's wiped out, but then you have like a bunker of military guys, right? And they've got scientists, and they've got commanders, and they've got some jets, and they've got some fuel, and they're able to run them for years, decades, and they fly around, they visit different people, they tell them what happened, but at the same time, they're never going to be able to make another jet again, right? The facilities for doing that are gone because you got parts from all over the world that go together to make this F-14 or F-22 or F-35. And yeah, you can fly around in a Chinook helicopter, but then eventually you're going to run out of the parts to make the Chinook helicopters. You're going to run out of the parts to make these different flying devices. And all people are going to have are the stories and the depictions that they make of it. And, you might try to save that knowledge, but eventually all physical evidence of that knowledge is going to be gone. It's going to rust. It's going to, dissolve away to nothing over time. And you're going to have myths and stories to pass that knowledge along with, because eventually all the media that we use to share that knowledge, whether it be books, whether it be digital, it's all going to be gone. And so the stories are the only thing that lasts forever. And that's why I think we still have the stories we have today, because people try to pass on this knowledge from one generation to another. What it actually means gets lost, and we just have to do the best we can to try to understand what it is they're trying to explain to us, what these stories actually mean. Who was Jupiter? Who was Zeus? Who were Poseidon and Neptune? Are these really just the forces of nature? Were these really people who had some kind of technological implements, but it was destroyed in the catastrophe of Atlantis? Because that would all line up together. But Bright Insight has some really good stuff on Atlantis. If you haven't been watching him, you definitely check him out on YouTube. But
I'm adding wine to my cult criteria.
All right. Well, you got me, man. You got me. Well, listen, we've talked in this show several times. We're going to talk a little bit about the treaty at Long Island. And we've talked on this show a bit about how our area, Carter County, Tennessee, was a big part of the American Revolution, and how we contributed to the battle at Kings Mountain, which contributed to Cornwallis being defeated at Yorktown. We've talked about how that happened a few times on this show, but the long and short of it was Major Patrick Ferguson. He threatened the people on this side of the mountain that if they didn't lay down their arms, he was going to come get them. The people here said, "Fuck that, we're going to get you." They went out and they took out Patrick Ferguson down in Kings Mountain in South Carolina, right there on the South Carolina-North Carolina border. But what that did was it actually held off Cornwallis from being able to resupply, go to Charlotte, and it allowed a General Nathaniel Greene, who has 14 counties named after him, including Greene County, Tennessee, and Greene County, North Carolina. It allowed him to chase Cornwallis all over the place up to Yorktown, and where he would eventually surrender, being surrounded by Washington and a bunch of his generals. And that was effectively the end of the Revolutionary War. And Mr. Greene, General Greene, he has 14 different counties in different states named after him. and he was kind of like the Rocky of generals. Like he had some wins.
Willing to take a punch until people give up.
Yes, he got the shit kicked out of him the whole war. He actually was never in the battles. He was a general, and some generals rode with their soldiers, General Washington, and some did not. General Greene was not one that did. He didn't actually participate in the battle. He just planned the battles, and he was kind of like, he was a little bit crazy because he was kind of like just bouncing back and forth all over the country. But a lot of people wanted his job because he had lost some, he'd lost some battles. But the thing was that no matter what, whenever he did lose, he seemed to inflict enough casualties and damage on the British that they would have been better off had they just never fought. And he did actually have some decisive wins at the Battle of Camden, and this was up in New Jersey. And let's find right here. He had a battle at where'd it go? Guilford Courthouse, right? So Guilford Courthouse. You had groups of Tories who were basically loyalists to the crown who lived in North Carolina, and they were trying to slow down Greene as he was going after Cornwallis. And the Tories, like, there were these guys. There was one guy, Bloody Bill Cunningham, who would he was a notorious Tory. He would go out and he'd come along the forts and he'd tell everybody, if you lay down your arms and come on out, we'll capture you and take you in, and then he'd just shoot everybody. So this was even as the war was winding down, and it was pretty well certain that the Americans were going to win. They were still doing this. But anyway, the Guilford Courthouse battle was one of the famous ones that Nathaniel Greene lost, but he inflicted so many casualties on the enemy that they were better, even though they won the ground, they were better off having not won at all. And actually, Greene had been surrounded, but he still held the best position, but he didn't realize he held the best position. So he retreated from the battlefield and had lost a lot fewer than the Tories and the Brits had lost. So Cornwallis's troops actually lost like 600 men in this battle, and Greene's lost like a couple dozen. And he battled, he backed off and retreated, thinking that they didn't have as good a position as they did. But anyway, it'll cause Cornwallis to be like, okay, we got to get out of here. We got no supplies. We're not close enough to the river. So he starts retreating. After Greene retreats from the battlefield, Cornwallis heads back up and tries to head up to Yorktown, Virginia, and where he'll eventually be surrounded and surrender. And as he retreats, Greene chases him because he's had a chance to regroup, even though he thought he was losing, but he wasn't really. So he backed off, regrouped. Cornwallis is like, man, well, we won the battlefield. We won the battleground. We hold the ground now, but we're out of supplies. We're out of ammunition. We're out of food. We got to get the hell out of here. So he tries to retreat. Well, Greene goes after him. Cornwallis is burning all the bridges on the way, so Greene can't quite keep up with him. But in the midst of all this, you've got the Indian wars going on between the settlers, right? Because the British have convinced the Indians the Cherokee to rise up against and dishonor the deals that they made with the American settlers. And this is in this context that General Greene needs John Sevier, who will go on to be the governor of Tennessee. He needs him to make peace with the Indians. So General Greene appealed to the Over Mountain men for help, and they received the message they were in the midst of a treaty with Cherokee at Long Island, which is Kingsport, Tennessee. If you look in the middle of the Holston River over there. Kingsport here in Tennessee, yes. It was scheduled for July 20th, 1781, but it was actually started a week later. So I want to read to you this from John Sevier and the Tassel, the principal speaker for the Cherokee. And these are the Cherokee's address to Colonel Sevier. Colonel Sevier says, the Tassel says, I know that you are a man and a warrior. I've heard different talks by different people, quite different from what I expected. I fear you must have been angry, and that it was caused by some evil persons. You have risen up from a warrior to a beloved man. I hope your speech will be good. Colonel Sevier, in replying to the Tassel, said, I have never hated the Cherokee, but have had to fight them for the safety of my people. Now, Nancy Ward, who we've also talked about a couple times on the channel, She arose at this point and made a talk. You know that women are always looked upon as nothing, but we are your mothers and you are our sons. Our cry is all for peace. Let it continue. This peace must last forever. Let your women's sons be our sons. Let our sons be yours. Let your women hear our words. And they made this treaty at Kingsport between, except for a couple groups of the Chickamauga who were part of the Cherokee who like didn't really go along with this. They continued to fight with Sevier, but the Cherokee who were based out of the capital city of Chota, they never again had fights with the settlers over there until they were actually removed by the U.S. government, which was separate from Sevier and his men. So the people of Tennessee never fought with the Cherokee. They made that peace agreement. The Cherokee never fought with the people of Tennessee until the Congress and Andrew Jackson actually removed the Indians and the Indian Removal Act there. So it was like yet another example of...
In return, why government is not a good thing.
Exactly. Yet another example of the federal government jumping in there. And that peace, there was no reason to break that peace. They had upheld it for, what was it, near, like 60 years at the time when that happened. So, but I thought that was interesting. John Sevier, that's who Tennessee is named after.
Zach Brannigan is Greenville.
What's that?
Zach Brannigan from Futurama.
Yeah.
Greenwood. Like,
Yeah.
Once I realized the killbots had a kill limit, I had no choice but to send wave after wave of my own men.
No, he wasn't that bad, but he did a lot of stuff where he was one of Washington's favorite generals, but he was looked on he wasn't looked on so well by others. But he actually replaced General Gates, and General Gates had really let people down. He had been afraid of battle, and he really screwed up a couple times before Greene replaced him. Now Greene, like I said, he lost some battles, but when he did, he made it to where the British wished they hadn't even done it because they were so fucked up after it. Kind of like fighting Rocky, He takes every punch after punch after punch, and he just keeps coming at you until you're eventually so worn out you can't keep going anymore. And that's how the American Revolution ended.
A punch after punch after punch, he means wave after wave of his own men getting shot. Like Zach Brannigan.
Let's check the chat out here. Y'all were laughing at something there while I was reading.
Spill said her meatloaf turned out good, but Dustin was not happy about the onions.
No.
Crispy fried onions.
Ooh, I love them with crispy fried onions. Those are good.
You can just scrape a little onion off a golf portion there.
I made what I ended up putting on my pizza was steak and onions and mushrooms with some Coley Jack cheese and some mozzarella cheese and Parmesan cheese and some basil and some Alfredo sauce. I'm going to talk about good. Except for the onions, Dustin would have loved it.
Yeah.
Can't eat onions, man. I'm sorry.
That's a shame.
I like an onion.
Well, listen.
At least you can still smell them.
I'm glad it turned out most excellent. I'm glad
That's
you all
the
joined us
worst
tonight. You can still smell them. Do they smell good to you? Or
No, they smell repulsive.
Ah.
It's the opposite of coffee.
See, like I know a lot of people
Coffee smells delicious.
are allergic to peanut butter, but they love the smell. They love the taste of it. They just can't eat it.
Mm. They're like a spitter with peanut butter. Or making contact allergies swell up.
I don't know, but I know a lot of people that can't eat peanut butter wish they could. My sister
But they wish they could too. The meal options would be
allergic to a bunch of stuff.
vastly improved.
All right,
Thai
y'all.
food without peanut. Can't enjoy it. PBJ. Man, your life's terrible, guys. I'm sorry.
You ever had peanut butter and onions?
What? No.
No. Continue though. I'm
That
morbidly
was
curious.
that was a popular sandwich in about 100 years ago, and you find it in like some Hemingway books and like some of the literature around the 20s, 30s, and stuff like that. That was popular. Peanut butter and red onions.
What's wrong with people?
No,
Yeah.
but I kind
Not one of
of
those
want
people
to
did
try
what
it
they
sometime
did.
though.
Yeah.
But
I better not show up for your next end of it. I made some sandwiches for you. I'll be like, I'm not even doing it.
Right.
I'm sorry. I smell the red onion cooking through
Well,
that Peter Pan.
I only have sweet onions and yellow onions, so there's no danger of that right now. But listen, we're running kind of late, but this is one of those topics we could talk on all night and never touch
Who the Antichrist is, which
Yeah.
is next week. Elon
Yeah. You could say Elon. He's got to do great signs and wonders, right? And he's got to be wounded and then come back, which is one of the reasons a lot of people say that the UN was, or that the
He already got
Roman
wounded.
Empire.
Not Spill.
Not Spill.
He already got wounded on Twitter.
Ooh, bird.
Ooh, he was the sacrifice. I told you, there was only one way to kill a Twitter beast.
All right, y'all. Well, we didn't really get to a lot of stuff, but there's a lot of people out there that do. We're just having a good time talking about it. I hope you're having a good time with us, and I hope you'll come back and see us on Wednesday night. We'll be going to talking what is it, news and current events roundup. Hopefully, I can reveal.
Joel Osteen.
Hopefully, I can reveal my video there, and hopefully you'll join us. And the next Sunday, we'll get back to do another one on the day of rest here. On.
And I guess I'm gonna have to make Cliff a second video, so he'll stop showing the Smurf dick one.
Hey, I got to work with what you give me.
That's true.
Just
All right.
play Dame Cat.
All right, guys. See you next week, or see you Wednesday. Thanks all.